to the continuing threat of public health from COVID-19, City Council committees are currently meeting remotely. We are using Microsoft Teams to make these remote hearings possible. Instructions for how the public may view and offer public testimony at the public hearings of the Council of the Committee are included in the public hearing notice that are published in the Daily News, Inquirer, and Legal Intelligencer prior to the hearings and can also be found on phlcouncil.com. I now note that the hour has come. Mr. McDermott, will you please call the roll to take attendance, and members that are in attendance, please indicate that you are present when your name is called, and also say a few words so you're responding that your image will be displayed on screen when you speak. Mr. McDermott?
Councilmember Bass.
Good morning. This is Councilwoman Bass. I am present. Thank you.
Councilmember Brooks. Councilmember Dom.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and colleagues and attendees. I am present. Thank you.
Councilmember Gautier.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, colleagues in Philadelphia. Present.
Councilmember Gilmore Richardson.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, colleagues. I am present.
Councilmember Green.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, colleagues. I am present.
Councilmember Gim. Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Jones. Councilmember O'Neill.
Good morning, everyone.
Councilmember O. Councilmember Parker.
Good morning, Chairman Squilla, colleagues, and to the viewing public.
Councilmember Quinones Sanchez.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, colleagues. I'm present.
Councilmember Thomas.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning to the listening public. I'm present.
And Councilmember Squilla.
Good morning and welcome. Thank you. A quorum of the committee is present, and the hearing is now called to order. This is a continued public hearing on the Committee of the Whole regarding bills number 220284, 220285, 220286, 220287, 220288, 220240, and Resolution 220300. Mr. McDermott, can you please read the titles of the bills and resolutions?
Bill number 220284, an ordinance to adopt a capital program for the 6 fiscal years 2023 to 2028 inclusive. Bill number 220285, an ordinance to adopt a fiscal 2023 capital budget. Bill number 220286, an ordinance adopting the operating budget for fiscal year 2023. Bill number 220287, an ordinance amending section 10-1001 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Fees of Commissioners of Records to increase certain fees for the recording of deeds and mortgages and related documents under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 220288, an ordinance amending section 19-1403 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Imposition of Tax by creating a Philadelphia County Demolition Fund to increase and encourage economic development by demolishing blighted properties within the city, imposing a related fee for recorded documents and related items, and making technical changes all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 220240, an ordinance substantially increasing the budget and number of areas and neighborhoods around the city served by the Community Life Improvement Program to improve the health, safety, and cleanliness of every neighborhood and enhance the quality of life for all residents. And resolution number 220300, resolution providing for the approval by the Council of the City of Philadelphia, a revised 5-year financial plan for the City of Philadelphia, covering fiscal years 2023 through 2027 and incorporating revised changes with respects to fiscal year 2022, which is to be submitted by the mayor to the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority, the authority pursuant to the Intergovernmental Cooperation Agreement authorized by an ordinance of this council, approved by the mayor on January 3rd, 1992, by and between the city and the authority.
Thank you. Today we'll continue the public hearing of the Committee of the Whole to consider the bills read by the clerk to constitute proposed operating and capital spending measures for fiscal year 2023, a capital program and forward-looking capital program for fiscal year 2023 through fiscal year 2028. Before we begin to hear testimony from the witnesses we have for today, everyone who has been invited to the meeting to testify should be aware that the public hearing is being recorded. Because the hearing is public, participants and viewers have no reason to expectation of privacy. By continuing to be in the meeting, you are consenting to being recorded. Additionally, prior to recognizing members for the questions or comments they have for witnesses, I would note for the record at this time that we will use the chat feature available on Microsoft Teams to allow members to signify that they wish to be recognized in order to comply with the Sunshine Act. The chat feature must only be used for this purpose. This morning, we will hear testimony from Streets Department and the Fire Department. This afternoon, we will hear testimony from Department of Prisons. Mr. McDermott, can you please read the first person to testify?
The first witness this morning is Streets Commissioner Carlton Williams.
Thank you, Commissioner. You want to just state your name again for the record and then proceed with your testimony.
Good morning, Chairman Squilla and all of the members of City Council. My name is Carlton Williams, and I'm the Streets Commissioner for the City of Philadelphia. Joining me today are Keith Warren, Deputy Commissioner for Sanitation, Richard Montanez, Deputy Commissioner for Transportation, and Christopher Newman, Deputy Commissioner for Administration, along with many of my staff who perform great service for the citizens of Philadelphia. I am pleased to provide testimony on the Streets Department's fiscal year 2023 operating budget. The FY2023 operating budget, general fund budget request for the Streets Department is $212.5 million as reflected in the general fund ordinance for our department, representing a $37.2 million increase than current estimated obligations for the fiscal year. This is quite a substantial increase, which is due to the infusion of significant funds for various new and comprehensive programs, as well as expansions. This includes infrastructure improvement staff and resources to manage a massive investment in new federally supported infrastructure law for transportation public works projects, transitioning the city's entire school crossing guard program from the police department to the streets department, continued expansion of the department's mechanical street cleaning program, the addition of 2 new illegal dumping crews, implementation of a new in-house ADA ramp construction crew, and additional support for managing and regulating new outdoor dining establishments. As Council is aware, Streets continues to pursue highly ambitious goals regarding litter reduction and waste diversion, effective and efficient roadway maintenance, and the continued actualization of multimodal traffic calming and safety. Our objective, metrics-based approach, using tools such as the Litter Index, Roadway Quality Index, High Injury Corridor data, and various other operational data ensures that we focus these efforts to those areas that need it the most, often in predominantly minority and disadvantaged areas, where older, smaller, and more condensed housing and geographic street layouts can exacerbate litter conditions and transportation infrastructure quality, as well as in high crime areas where certain improvements, such as better street lighting, may deter crime. The department is committed to continually improving our objective planning measures as we ensure racial equity in addressing services for city residents. While the impact of the COVID-19 proved to be a challenge over recent fiscal years, the department has been able to successfully overcome this issue and make remarkable strides towards our core mission and strategic goals. Streets anticipates, however, that the long-term impact of the COVID-19 pandemic will involve structural changes to overall city businesses and continued work-from-home arrangements going forward, creating higher levels of trash tonnage in future fiscal years. Streets has successfully implemented various solutions to address this projected reality long-term, the most important of which included adding a new comprehensive section collections operation shift. These actions have already drastically helped improve collection operations as well as significantly reduced overtime. The department now feels poised and excited to continue our progress going forward and to embark on many varied new initiatives and plans the administration has established for us in fiscal 2023. For example, further expansion of our citywide curb-to-curb mechanical cleaning program and the addition of 2 new illegal dump crews will significantly extend cleaning activities to more areas most in need based upon actual objective litter conditions. Streets plans to establish a new pilot ADA in-house construction and restoration crew responsible for completing the non-complex curb ramp restorations through the city. Currently, ADA ramp construction and restoration is exclusively performed by contractors at an average per ramp cost of $15,000. Implement a city staff ADA ramp construction and restoration operation will mitigate costs for non-complex ramp work and potentially provide for the repurposing of available resources for additional roadway resurfacing work. The city's school crossing guard program will also be transitioning from the police department to streets, adding an entirely new and large citywide program to the department. Streets is embracing this transition and intends to leverage resources, strengths pertaining to traffic and intersections analysis, mass hiring of large new employee groups, to training and development capacity to improve crossing guard operations going forward. The department greatly appreciates the cooperation and support of the Philadelphia Police Department and the Managing Director's Office as we gradually transition to the program's various components throughout FY2023. In addition, the department, in collaboration with the city's Office of Sustainability and the Philadelphia Energy Authority, will implement an ambitious plan to modernize and convert the entire citywide street lighting system to more energy efficient and effective LED lights within a few years through a highly anticipated and innovative performance contract with an energy service company, which is known as ESCO. Reduced costs from the energy savings shared between ESCO and the city are expected to be significant as lighting maintenance contracts activities will be drastically reduced. Over 100,000 streetlights are expected to be converted to LED lighting in less than a 3-year time horizon as a result of this initiative. Finally, one of the biggest initiatives we are most excited about is the recent federal infrastructure bipartisan infrastructure bill law, which is expected to infuse potentially up to $570 million in transportation-related public works projects funds to the Streets Department over 5 years for much-needed roadway, bridge, and traffic infrastructure reconstruction and upgrades. The scope and level of such funding represents a tremendous opportunity to stabilize and extend the life of the transportation infrastructure assets across the city for years to come. The Streets Department and its employees look forward to providing yet another year of exemplary service as we fulfill our mission of clean, green, and safe streets. Our biggest request today not only allows us to continue to pursue this objective, but also to significantly expand our capacity to do so with the addition of a variety of new initiatives and resources. We therefore request your favorable consideration of this budget request, and we thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. The deputies and staff and I are happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you for your testimony. I'm just going to start with one question, then I'll let my colleagues ask. As you can imagine, there's a lot of questions. Real quick, I'm just going to talk about the street cleaning. I know they're being piloted in certain areas right now. What is the projection of the street cleaning, and are we looking to expand in this current year or as we move forward?
So thank you, Councilman, for your question. Yes, we are expanding to additional areas this year. Last year, we had 6 areas that we were piloting. We actually expanded to 14 areas through this fiscal year. So we have expanded throughout the city of Philadelphia in different areas of the city. The overall plan is to have a citywide program somewhere in the near future. Our goal is 3 phases. Number 1, to expand the existing boundaries of the areas that we already targeted, add additional areas and locations that currently do not have street sweeping, and then to develop a plan for different intervals based on litter conditions and neighborhoods driven by the litter index. So, for example, one area, most areas right now receive weekly, but some areas that are lightly littered or not littered at all don't need weekly street cleaning. That's a waste of resources and inefficiency. They may receive it every other month or monthly. So we are now planning that out based on the litter index and based on geographic areas of the city so that everyone across the city will additionally have mechanical street sweeping citywide.
And the determination for those locations right now are done based, I guess, on the litter index. So did you try to pilot the areas that seem to have the most street litter and then gradually move out to other areas?
That's absolutely correct. So we used the areas that had the highest litter ratings in the city, which is most areas have illegal dumping, litter along curb lines and so forth. Those are the areas that we targeted first, and then we'll build out from those locations.
Okay, well, I'm going to stop asking questions. I'll come back with more. I see people have jumped on already. And so first I go to Majority Leader Parker.
Thank you so very much, Chairman Squilla. Special good morning to you, Commissioner Carlton Williams. I need to start with saying my thank yous to both you, Deputy Keith Warren, Rich Montanez, Mary Stitt, Crystal Jacobs, Lord knows Noel, Kyle Lewis, who recently helped us with the legislation regarding the illegal dumping. And my hope, Commissioner, if this bill passes through council, that it will help you and the Streets Department with the enforcement of illegal dumping by making the fine amounts so high that any of these companies that have been treating our neighborhoods as if they were trash dumps, that they will be deterred from this activity. I know it feels like you have a very thankless job. I, along with my colleagues, call you and your team all times of the day and night with a sense of urgency because our people expect us to fix things. You're never arrogant. You're never aloof. Whenever it's an emergency, you always say, we'll get somebody on it. And I want you to know that we appreciate you for that. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.
With that being said, let me start with January of 2020, pre-COVID. I had a meeting with Charles Carrington, Omar Salam, and talked to District Council 33 President Ernie Garrett about the impact of the environmental safety of our sanitation workers. Long before there was any news articles talking about how their lives were in jeopardy and the risks that they take on a daily basis. We held that hearing in 2020 in October, and before and after the hearing, there was a whole lot of attention in the press around that strain. And then, Mr. Commissioner, I was told that we had a challenge with PPE, with the gloves, with the boots. I know Councilmember Gilmore Richardson, she was actively engaged. We were talking with Rich Laser and many others. I just want to make sure that from that perspective, that the gloves and the boots that our sanitation workers need while they're on the front lines, have those issues been addressed? How is the sanitation department staffed? Are all of the positions filled? And if not, how many more are you seeking to hire?
Thank you, Council Member. Yes, first of all, we want to thank you for your support in those areas. Council Member Gilmore Richardson, thank you so much for bringing attention to the desperately needed health and safety of our workers. We've always been committed to all our sanitation workers. So anything that they needed, whether we had it in existing inventory or we had to go get it, our department worked extremely hard to ensure that our workers were protected. The pandemic certainly impacted us just like every other department in the city of Philadelphia. Our workers actually contracted it at much higher rates than many other areas just by the simple size of our department. And we had to take extra precautions due to, social distancing and so forth. But I want to say that our department committed to making sure that all of our workers had all of the necessary health and safety initiatives, such as masks, goggles, gloves, all of those things that were accessible then are accessible now. We know we're not out of this. This could easily return during the peaks and valleys of the season. So we want to make sure that we're always practicing those hands.
All of the positions in sanitation filled?
Well, our department, because sanitation is such large and revolving, people retire, they move on to government, but majority of our department, yes, we're over 90 to 95% staffed in sanitation. With new hires,
how many workers does that mean, 90 to 95% staff?
Out of just sanitation of the entire
sanitation
department. Sanitation is roughly around 1,400 employees. So over 1,300 of them are actually on working today. And then we have vacancies and positions that we constantly fill.
Okay, let me get the street lights right now, Commissioner. I was told, and I think this was a news account, we have about 147 or 48,000 street lights or street lamps in the city of Philadelphia. You know, the light outage complaints with 311 in 2021, they went through the roof. In the Philadelphia neighborhood safety and community policing plan that I stood with our president and other colleagues to introduce, on page 8, quality of life issues, are a major focus of that. Tell us how we're doing with those light outage complaints due to contracting issues. We know we developed that backlog. And by 2021, I was told we had about 12,700 open service requests, and that was the most in the city's history. How many open requests do we have now on today, May the 11th? And I think you told me in our communication, or maybe another staffer, that we could fix about 2,000 lights per month with an active contractor. I think we have it. You'll answer that. And give us a timeline about when and how we can expect to see that backlog addressed, and then how we're going to deal with future light outages. And I want to get one more in, so please be succinct.
Sure. That backlog has been addressed. As of today, we have just under 300 open backlog work orders, and that was down from 12,000. So we worked very hard with our contractor to add more staff and work overtime hours to make sure that those backlog areas were addressed. So I'm pleased to report that. Going forward, we just mentioned in my testimony what the plan is for the future of the city of Philadelphia, which is bright, which is ESCO, which is to convert them to LED, which requires less maintenance and less contractors to resolve those issues.
All right, final question I want to get in this round, and I'll Mr. Chairman, sign up for the next one. It's this issue with these cameras. Again, neighborhood safety and community policing plan, quality of life cameras. Now, I will tell you, I was a little perturbed during the exchange we had with OIT relative to the street lights, because we were talking about those that were connected into the city system. So we were talking about the police cameras, the Commerce Department cameras, then the streets cameras. I want you to tell us, if you will, does OIT do all of the installation of the cameras for streets? How many do we have sort of waiting to be installed? How many need to be fixed from a maintenance perspective? And let's talk about the monitoring of those cameras, because I loved hearing in your testimony, we want cleaner and greener streets, but in order to be safer, they have to be monitored, particularly these dumping sites. So tell us where we are with these cameras.
Yes, thank you. We work very closely with OIT for the installation of those cameras. The monitoring of those cameras lies within the streets department. And we also utilize the police department cameras as well, who also overlap with illegal dumping areas and crime areas. So all total, we have over 291 cameras. 191 have been installed. 85 are remaining to be installed. That's with streets department's personnel only. That's our resources only. Who monitors them? Our staff, our sweep unit, our transportation administration monitors those areas for illegal dumping to report to the police department and through our new system that we're working through the law department.
Well, finally, let me say this, Commissioner. I want to give a special shout out to the sweep team, right? The folks who are out there looking through those bags, and sanitation has a difficult job. So do these sweep officers, trying to find an address, a telephone number, anything that they can to connect whomever is responsible for this trash being dumped illegally in our city. They have to do that work. When we passed this legislation increasing these fines, now they're the maximum allowable by state law. 2,000 for illegal dumping, not with the car. 5,000 currently with the car. However, we will be able to charge $5,000 per large piece of debris. So think of tires now in Philadelphia. If you dump a tire, the maximum penalty we can charge is $5,000. But if you dump 20, once this legislation is passed, we'll be able to penalize these companies at $100,000, $5,000 per piece of debris. So sweeps, stay strong. We're sending help. And Commissioner, in closing, special thank you to you for coming to the PHL-TCB rally. I opened up saying I felt like Biggie on that day. It was all a dream, but we made it happen. The program is up and running. Over 200 cleaning ambassadors in neighborhoods across the city, and you came out to support those men and women who are helping the streets department. It's not instead of, it's in partnership. When sanitation crews go out to pick up the trash, they're picking up trash collected by our ambassadors. And I want you to close, sir, with your comments and thoughts about PHL-TCB's partnership with sanitation.
Oh, it's a tremendous initiative. Without programs like PHL-TCB, we would not be able to keep our commercial corridors clean. Ultimately, loose litter is probably the biggest detraction among our business districts. Unfortunately, we don't have the staff to service all business districts in the city of Philadelphia. So this program is actually critical to ensuring that we maintain those areas on a daily basis. So we are certainly appreciative of the TCP program in the city of Philadelphia.
Thank you, Commissioner, and to council members Isaiah Thomas and Jamie Gaultier. Thank you so very much for also coming into the 5th District, Council President Clark's district, to support those men and women. Thank you, Commissioner.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilmember Parker. Councilmember Gautier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Commissioner Williams.
Good morning.
I want to start by thanking you and Deputy Commissioner Warren and your whole team for all that you do on a daily basis.
I appreciate your support always. Yep.
Absolutely. My first questions are about streetlights. How does streets determine priority for repairing streetlights? And in particular, is there ever a data-driven consideration of gun violence when prioritizing and scheduling light repairs?
Good question. First of all, most of our street lights come in through, like every other request, through our 311 system, and they're actually serviced in accordance to the time that it came into the system. However, we do work with the managing director's office on programs like Operation Pinpoint, who identifies high crime locations that is in desperate need of street lighting and repairs. I think there was an allocation of an additional $150,000 to identify locations that have the highest areas and indices of crime and gun violence in those areas to make sure that we address those first. When there's programs and resources like that, then we prioritize high crime areas, but most of them come in through our 311 system.
I can appreciate that, and I'm glad that you're doing that coordination with Pinpoint, but I would push for streets to more broadly consider, prioritizing streetlight repair in areas that are experiencing high levels of gun violence just because of where we are right now with that crisis.
Understood. That's something we will definitely take in serious consideration. Yes.
Thank you. Can you talk to us about alley light repairs? Are homeowners technically responsible, and was there ever a time when this was not the case?
Well, there's still the responsibility of the streets department. I think the challenge is twofold. Number one, accessibility. Most of those are trash-filled areas that many of our technicians can't get to. And then we require teams of people to actually clean out those alleys before we can actually repair the light. So that's one of the challenges. The second challenge, we are limited in the number of people that we have to be able to service those lights. We're hoping with our ESCO agreement that we'll be able to free up resources to make alley lights a high priority like regular street lights are. We're trying to address that, but that is also always been the streets department responsibility.
I would push for us to see how we could better address that in the FY23 budget. We have so many requests for alley light repairs, and I think people are often confused about whether streets is going to help with that or not. Additionally, I think there needs to be better coordination with CLIP, because if we need to clean the alleys, to get to the lights, then we just need to do that, right? So I would push for there to be a greater consideration of that, and for you to get back to council about what more you can do in that area in the FY23 budget.
Sure. Councilmember, real quickly, a couple of years ago, and I think this is something that we're looking at again, is that we have Future Track program where we hired young people One of their biggest priorities was to address the alley conditions, and we coordinated with our street lighting crews to make sure that when we cleaned them out, the alley light was repaired. That is something that we are strongly going to look at to see if we can expand that program and to bring that back.
Can we do that in FY23?
We are looking at it with our future track budget. Yes, so that's something that we're looking at. Yeah.
Thank you. I have some questions about traffic calming. I know that we've talked about the need for increased traffic calming resources before, and I know we all agree that we're seeing street safety issues at worrisome levels since the pandemic. Can you call out the sections in this budget that show the staffing amounts and equipment amounts that will be going towards traffic calming efforts in FY23?
Sure. I will ask Deputy Commissioner Richard Martinez from Transportation to address this question. Rich, could you please come on?
Sure. Good morning, Council Member.
Good morning.
Hello, my name's Richard Martinez, Deputy Commissioner Streets. I apologize. I'm actually out of town, so I'm doing this on my phone, so please forgive me. Yeah, the Streets Department does use basically, we use some of our budget dedicated to traffic calming, such as speed cushions, the trailers that we move around the city. Now we're working with PennDOT on speed slots, such as that we did in your district, council member, on Cops Creek, and areas like that. We're also doing delineators, road diet, pavement markings. We partner with communities to now start doing painted bump outs. Such as the one that Sosna was graciously, they volunteered, they did it, the community rally up, they purchased, and it was a mural that was approved by Mural Arts that is painted on the curb. So we do have dedicated funding for that. And every one of our capital projects does have traffic calming involved in it.
Thank you. Would you be able to get back to council with specific callbacks about what sections of your proposed budget are going towards traffic calming efforts in FY23? Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
I know we've talked before about how we get dozens of, inquiries for traffic calming, every year, particularly stop signs and speed cushions. Response times from street can vary widely from a couple of weeks to over 1 year, and 90% of the time our constituents' requests are rejected. We want to be able, with this budget, to get you the resources you need to change that dynamic. We know that not every request is going to be granted, but the criteria that 85% of speeds on residential streets have to be 35 miles per hour or higher in order to get speed cushions seems intentionally designed to limit success and offer a no to constituents who are crying out for some level of intervention. Knowing that our communities really want these investments, how much would it cost for streets to keep up with a policy change that was more flexible, gave more deference to what people are experiencing on the ground, and therefore brought more traffic calming to our residential neighborhoods?
I'll start and then I'll turn it back over to Deputy Commissioner Rich Martinez. I think one of the options that we can consider that doesn't require intense traffic studies is the temporary speed cushions that we use that are made of reusable rubber. I think those have been effective in some neighborhoods, and we do have the flexibility that we don't have to go through an arduous process to be able to get those in those neighborhoods. The permanent ones, we do require traffic study, and we have been running delays. But Rich, did you real quickly want to add? We can get her the cost. We can get the council member the cost of what that would be to expand to other neighborhoods in the city.
Yeah, I would want to know that. And even if you have to get back to us, I would want to know what needs to happen for us to have a policy change as well that offered a little more flexibility in the way that we analyze these requests.
So we are working with DVRPC, Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, to look at our roads as a way for us to look how we classify them, and also traffic calming. This would allow us more flexibility on our policy, and therefore I think it would give you, once I finish that study with them, I'm more than happy to have a discussion with you. We're also looking what other big cities are doing as part of the NACTO side of this, and we're looking at their policies and all that and comparing it to Philadelphia.
Thank you so much. And if you could get back with that detail on how much we're allocating towards speed cushions and stop signs in FY23, that would be very helpful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for your questions. Councilmember Dom?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you. And good morning, Commissioner Williams.
Good morning, council member.
I just also want to join my colleagues in thanking you, your department, your team for responsiveness and everything you guys do to help us answer the questions of constituents and to make the streets safer across the board.
Our pleasure. Thank you, sir.
And I will say this, and I know my majority leader spoke about this, we do reach out to you at all hours of the day and night, and you guys are responsive, so I appreciate it. And I want to have 2 or 3 items I wanted to talk to you about today, and one has to do with streeteries. And I know that last year, as the temporary pandemic allowances for streeteries were about to expire, we passed legislation in council to formally legalize streeteries and start the process of putting official rules and regulations in place. Because we want streeteries to be a really positive feature in the city, it's important that they're safe, attractive, flexible, especially when the street needs paving or utilities need access. We understand that. So first, on that topic, I know that the administration came out with some regulations that had a lot of pushback from the businesses that these regulations would affect. And I know that you listened in a meeting to the concerns of the operators, and I know we're supposed to get back to them with what the new regulations will be. And I'm trying to see when you think that time frame might be, because right now, of course, today's a gorgeous day outside, and I'm sure people want to take advantage of outdoor eating. And I'm sure the restaurants want to plan for what they're going to do this summer. So any idea when you think you'll be able to publish that revised streetery regulations with the adjustments that hopefully will be made?
Sure. It's currently under review with our Division of Transportation. Rich Montanez has been working personally on it, and I certainly want to thank all of those guys for the hard work in helping our businesses through the pandemic. So, Rich, could you please address the council member's question regarding the information that he sent to us regarding timing of the regulation amendments?
Yes. Good morning, council member. My name is Richard Montanez, Deputy Commissioner of Streets. We are reviewing all the comments that came to us. As you are aware, we did have a hearing on March 16th. We're still discussing it with the law department about what can be or what the regulations will be finalized, and we still have not posted. I do apologize. We are way behind schedule on this, but as you said to us, we want to get this right when we do put it out. We will be discussing with you the regulations before we publish them. So we're still in discussions with the law department, gathering everything, and hopefully I can discuss it with you sometime soon.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you. And I just want to mention also, Commissioner, Councilman Squilla and I were on a community meeting, I think a few weeks ago, and we asked Deputy Commissioner Montanez to be on the meeting, and thank God we did, because he did a great job in answering all the questions. It made us look good. Otherwise, we would have been massacred in that meeting, but Rich did a great job, so really appreciate it, Rich. Thank you. A second question I have, Commissioner, is on the illegal dumping.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's a huge problem. I've heard about it through all these hearings. I've been hearing about it for years all over the city. You know, as soon as we clean something up, the next day people are dumping in areas they shouldn't be dumping in. And I know my colleagues have mentioned this in hearings with OIT, and almost anywhere there isn't a constant presence, you know, people just are dropping truckloads of trash all over. It's really sad that people think they can get away with this.
Yes.
A lot of it's construction trash, I understand. So my understanding is that it's illegal right now for contractors to use city sanitation facilities for construction trash and recycling. It's also illegal for them to dump trash in alleys, I guess, and empty lots and sidewalks. But unless there's a camera that records a license plate, there isn't really any consequence that we can enforce here. So in earlier hearings, I know the administration has basically said that full camera coverage isn't feasible across the city. Would it make sense for us to accept contractor waste and debris at city sites, even at charging people for it? It just seems like letting people dump construction debris in the city site would be a better way than letting them dump it all over the neighborhoods.
Right. So there's a couple of things, council member. Thank you for your comments. And yes, that this is a challenge that we have tried to address for years, especially after the pandemic. You and I have had several discussions on this as well. We've looked at and we have changed our policies to allow trucks in that have small loads of contractor debris. There are some state stipulations that we can't accept certain materials. Certain materials by law has to be recycled. So those are the things that we have to look at. We are very open to trying to see what our drop-off centers can handle in terms of daily tonnage requirements for contractors to be allowed in, small contractors, but by law, most of them are required to have a waste disposal system and recycle certain materials, such as, drywall. All of those things should be recycled, actually, and not disposed of as trash. What we're having problems with is the smaller contractors, and I think that's what you're asking us to consider, who may not or cannot afford to do it and just dump it at a location. That's something that we will ultimately take a look at to see if it's feasible and do we have the capacity to accept it at the 6 drop-off centers. We only have 6, and they stay routinely full. So we may have to look at other options as well to open it up. But many of them, fortunately, contractors, hopefully this will help, and hopefully other contractors will comply, but some of them just don't dump it anywhere they can, like you said earlier. So those are the ones that we want to enforce.
You'll always have the bad actors, but if we could make availabilities to the smaller contractors, it might solve some of this problem. Won't solve it all, but might solve some of it.
We will certainly look at it, yes.
Next question I have for you is on, one of the basic things we hear from constituents is we want public safety. We want our streets to be paved and clean, and other things other than that. But in the area of paving, I noticed that in your testimony, looks like almost $570 million is coming to this city over the next 4 or 5 years, I believe, for infrastructure. And it looks like you have an infusion of $100 million for roadway resurfacing, hopefully for this coming year. My question is, in 2020, any idea of how many miles of streets we repaved, and in 2021, and what we're planning on in 2022?
Sure. I'm going to ask Deputy Commissioner Montanez to give you the number of paving miles that we've actually performed. We want to thank the administration for the infusion of dollars, especially in regards to helping us increase the number of miles with the ADA stipulations. But Deputy Commissioner Montanez, we know we slowed down during the pandemic and then we picked up with the infusion of money. Please give the council member the details. Thanks.
Commissioner, I'm going to put that one. I apologize because I'm not in the office. But Nancy Sen, if she's on, could she please provide those numbers?
Sure. In 20, we did about 30 miles. In 21, we dropped down to in 21, we dropped down to 18 miles. The $100 million that came in the 22 capital program, we're splitting that between this season and next season. This season we have 68 miles programmed, and next season we're looking to get about 60 miles programmed.
One last question: What was our goal in 20 and 21? Understanding there was a pandemic, but what was the goal for miles to be resurfaced, basically?
Go ahead, Nancy. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What we paved is we used all the money we got. Also taking into account that that same pot of money is used to do the ADA ramps. So the remainder of all the money that we got was used on constructing ramps along those corridors that we paved.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Commissioner, and your team. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Bass? You're available?
I am available. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioner. How are you?
Good morning, council member. How you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for asking. First I want to start out with a big thank you because, whenever we call, you're right there. You always follow up. the work of the streets department, you and your team, regardless of the issue, whether it's, we have a dumping situation or street lights, all of the things that you do very well. And I just wanted to publicly say that because I know that it's hard. During the early days of the pandemic, in the summer of 2020, there was a lot of criticism around, the streets department and not recognizing that. I think that, like your workers get COVID too. The people that work in your department, they get sick too. And so I hope that it certainly brought a new level of support to all of those, under your command and members of District Council 33 as well. I just had a couple of questions for you. And the first was, you mentioned second collection. And so I was wondering if you could detail what that looks like and what it will do for the city of Philadelphia. When I think of second collection, what I guess I'm wondering is, will there be a twice a week collection, or more often than is currently scheduled, which is once per week? So can you talk about second collection a little bit?
Sure. What we learned from the pandemic is that we didn't have enough staff to keep up with the daily on-time collections, as you mentioned, and thank you for acknowledging that as well. So we added a second shift to ensure that any trash that was left over by 3 o'clock, which is what we are required to try to get according to our service levels agreement, that will be collected by a second shift and would not be collected on overtime. It would be more collected by a routine shift to make sure it doesn't carry over to the next day. Because with trash, if you allow it to accumulate one day, it snowballs for the rest of the week, and then you're behind, and ultimately it rolls into the next week, as what we experienced during the pandemic. But this crew ensures that trash is most likely picked up within the day on its daily scheduled collection day. And so that's one thing that we wanted to assure the public, that they wouldn't have to worry about trash being left out overnight, especially during the summer months where it is at its worst.
Right. So that's not what I had envisioned, which was that there will be another day so if I got my trash picked up, let's say on Monday, maybe again on Thursday, there will be an additional run through by the streets department to pick up additional trash. So because in some areas, it seems to be that maybe more than one day of collection should be considered.
Yeah, we would probably need much more resources than that to do a separate collection across the city. This was a stopgap solution, so to ensure that we won't have the delays that they experienced during the pandemic.
Is it possible for us to look at how much that would cost and try to do a pilot program around that?
Sure, we could take a look at what the costs are. Ultimately, we will have a discussion with our budget office administration to see if we can do a pilot. It would require additional resources. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, do you think that, I'm just your personal opinion, do you think that this would be helpful?
So I think we tried it.
I don't want to suggest it if you're not going to buy in.
Yeah, no. I appreciate it. I think I'm going to ask Deputy Commissioner Warren to jump on, because I think he was here when we ultimately did have twice a week in certain neighborhoods of the city. Keith, are you there? Can you weigh in? I know you directly worked with this along with Cruz back in the early 2000s, I want to say. Are you there? I don't know if he's logged on. He may have fallen off. So we can.
I see his picture.
You there, Keith? Oh yeah,
I hear you.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, we had second collection in a part of the city, and it's well, first of all, it's resource intensive, and it created a lot of confusion on when we had separate collection days and separate collection days for recycling. I mean, we can definitely do a cost study and pilot it. I think that what happens in situations like that, sometimes it adds to the complaints, because people aren't they get confused about when their trash days are, or we get delayed on one day and then the next day. So it's a little challenging, but again, we can certainly look at it and cough it out.
And my only concern, council member, is that, we need to get people to follow the rules right now for what they set out, because if we add another day, if the way they set out trash today contributes a lot to our litter conditions. I'm afraid that adding another day, some neighbors will comply. Most of our citizens do a great job, but unfortunately, there are some that puts out trash any other way, and having trash out that many times per week only exasperates a litter problem. That's the only concern that I would have with adding a second collection operationally. There will be a fiscal cost to the city, and we can get that for you as well.
Well, I do want to offer up the 8th District. If you're interested in having a pilot program, I think that it's something that I understand your concerns and your fears and your worries around it, but I do think it's something that could be helpful. We hear some very common themes from our constituents around the problems in Philadelphia: trash, crime, schools. There's just some things that are just really set in stone in terms of what people want to see action on. And so, if you all are able to do a pilot program, we would love to, be able to point you in a direction that we think can help you model that program, so that we can get and also get some streets cleaned up. So we'd love to do that with you.
Absolutely. I'll be more than happy to have that conversation with you and the administration on it. Yep.
Excellent. Another question for you. We have been speaking with Jane Golden around putting together a pilot program to address litter and issues that seem to happen not just in my district, but throughout the city of Philadelphia. Conditions where it seems that dumping and all sorts of negative behaviors happen under underpasses in our neighborhoods. And so what we'll notice is that there will be dumping in under an underpass. There's no lighting. It's sort of like a thing to do. We've been working with Jane to beautify those areas, but of course we would need cleaning and also lighting to go with them. Is that something that we think that we can put together with your office?
Yeah, Jane does a great job. Number one, and I say that Mural Arts program actually, when we see murals that pop up, that actually deters people from dumping because of it's well maintained usually in those areas that we do have murals, and they do have great greening, like through the PHS program. So we are all supportive of murals as a way to enlighten the community and improve the quality of life. And yes, that's something that we would support. Yes.
Excellent. Okay, I have more questions, but I'm going to have to come back in a second round. Thank you very much.
Just in time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember O?
Thank you very much, Chairman. All right. Good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning, Councilmember. How are you, sir?
Doing great, thank you. Going back to the discussion about illegal dumping and illegal parking of large commercial vehicles like trailers that carry vehicles, tractor trailers, that type of thing. So at least from kind of considering and looking into these issues, and I'll preface this by saying that I live in Southwest Philadelphia on a block that has constant problems with illegal dumping. For as long as I can remember, in recent times, going back 10 or 15 years, it is a continuous problem, but has never been a problem like it is these days. The amount of construction, debris, material, all sorts of things in large green trash bags, just constantly being dumped, car pieces, refrigerators, that type of thing. So it's a kind of never-ending problem. And nowadays, I would say through Southwest Philadelphia and parts of West Philadelphia, just the amount of trailers that haul vehicles which don't have any identification, license plate, there's no cab to it, there's no tractor to the trailer, type of thing. The problem appears, at least in part, to be that this stuff happens when people are asleep. And there isn't an ability to have like live enforcement of the law. This occurs, very quickly when people are asleep and people wake up to find this stuff like in their neighborhood. The enforcement of it is challenging because, to my understanding, part of it is under the police department. The streets department puts up the cameras, but then the camera video or recording is, to my knowledge, sent to the police, who don't have time to review the video. And so we go through this whole process. It just seems the third part of the problem is the confrontation. When citizens actually confront those people dumping, that turns out to be very dangerous these days, and something that citizens are advised not to do. I know several cases where people tried to confront people dumping illegally in broad daylight, and guns were pulled on them. And that type of thing. So there is currently, I believe, in the law, the forfeiture of vehicles that are engaged in dumping, and one, it doesn't seem to have deterred anyone. Number one, they don't pay the fines, and quite frankly, I'm not aware of situations where that's being enforced. What I've heard, and I don't know, is that when illegal dumpers are caught, that when they go to court, their case is negotiated to a summary offense, and therefore street department witnesses and police witnesses do not go to court, because at this point in time, when you do catch someone illegally dumping and they have a criminal trial, their case is negotiated to a summary offense. By the way, does that sound accurate to you so far about the summary offense?
To my knowledge, yes. I think some of the things, the lack of evidence has been a challenge in regards to the high stipulations of what's required once you catch someone on a video camera as well. So I think that's one of the concerns that the police department represents. They do review all the cases, but some of the things like evidence fall short of what can be prosecuted. So that's one of the challenges.
Let me ask you this, and I'll have to ask the district attorney. Is it the high standard of evidence required by the district attorney's office or by the legislation, which I doubt it's the legislation, so it would be the district attorney's office, or would it be some other entity that is requiring that much evidence?
I think it's between what the police provides the district attorney's offices that can be actually prosecutable.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So I did introduce a bill, and I did meet with, the police unit that is engaged in this, and they're extremely shorthanded. I think they had 2 active police officers for the entire city when it came to illegal tractor trailers and large commercial vehicles. And there's only, to my knowledge, 1 detective for illegal dumping in the entire city. So what I do believe is a solution is through the cameras, yes, but also by identifying the vehicles, license plate, make and model, and issuing the fines, but when they don't pay it, to then boot the vehicles. I'm a believer in booting these vehicles. There's no confrontation, and they have an opportunity to pay the fines and things like that. Same thing for illegal tractor trailers, locking wheels, more at an industrial level. What are your thoughts on that?
I think all enforcement is definitely something that will help this problem. So if we can expand the ways in which we enforce the law to put a bite in it. I think was talked about earlier is that most people say, I'll pay the fine to commit the crime, which is not good. I think that came up yesterday with the managing director's office when asked that question. He said most people just say, I'll just pay the fine. So we may have to make the fines or the penalties much tougher. And so what you're talking about doesn't make sense. Legally, if we can do that, yes, we should be doing more harsher penalties. I think what Councilmember Parker talked about earlier gives us the opportunity to charge more than what they are willing to pay, which is restitution and the cost per individual incident that's there. All of those things I think are very helpful. Booting cars, I'm all for it. If they are caught doing a crime, I'm all for all of those things because ultimately it tears the quality of life of our city down. So yes, I am for any type of enforcement that addresses this type of behavior, especially as egregious as it has been.
All right. Thank you very much for that. I will add, I just think that there is overall a sense that the laws are not enforced. And if you're caught, they won't be enforced anyway, not to any extent that makes any difference to anybody. And I think that perception, more than anything, that perception is creating a lot of these problems. My last real question is how much money is being spent not on repaving, but in other things that have to do with our streets. For example, from my perspective, I'll probably run out of time. We have a lot of streets that have potholes. We have a lot of streets that have structural problems. But it seems as though there are some major projects that cost a lot of money that have to do with restructuring the road as opposed to paving roads. I would like to know at some point in time, like how much money is going to restructuring roads. For example, I live in West Philly, and there has been a repaving of Cop Street Parkway. It's a busy road, but a lot of it seems to be putting the rumble strips in and putting the barriers in between the medians, so that cars or vehicles don't ride through the middle of the medians, all that type of thing. But the road was never that in that bad shape compared to a lot of other roads that have potholes like along the length of the entire road. And it's hard to see that like the distribution of funds in the sense that people primarily want a smooth, drivable, bikeable road as opposed to defects through roads that are just major roads that people use to get from one part of the city to the next. Is there a report that kind of lays out the costs of like special projects versus just simple repaving?
Sure, we can get you that number. I can just tell you in general, the cost of repaving is significantly cheaper than the cost of reconstruction. We're talking like about $20 per square foot versus $200 per square foot for a reconstructed road. So we can get you the cost per projects and how much it costs to invest in those areas. But repaving is always a viable solution to maintain the life expectancy of a roadway.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. If you could get that to the chair will distribute to all the members of council, and I certainly will be looking for that. Thank you very much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember Sanchez.
Good morning, Commissioner. How are you?
Good morning, council member. How are you doing today?
Good. Let me just put an explanation point in some of the points some of my colleagues brought up earlier as it relates to alley lighting, the LED lighting, all of these non-police public safety issues. And I look forward to, as we close out this budget, really looking at ways that we can ensure that the streets department has the resources it needs for the complaints we know that come in. I know you do the best job you can with what you have, but I think we've gotten to a point where now we need to say, if we have so many requests for alley lights, do you have enough money and capacity to do that? And I look forward to that conversation. I wanted to talk a little bit around the workforce. I appreciate the whole your whole team and their response in communities like Kensington. The police and the streets department, along with CLIP, are the saving grace, and Councilmember Squilla will agree with me. Without you, we would be getting cursed out much more often, but the residents are incredibly grateful for your response. But one of the things that I learned with COVID, particularly as it related to the workforce, essential workforce for the city, was the streets department. And I started talking to some colleagues across the country. Has anyone ever done a study to compare our salary and compensation packet in comparison to other cities. And I want to use this as an important example. We're asking people to come out and do this work and lose taste and smell over years. I don't think people recognize what happens to a sanitation worker over time, right? I mean, we're asking people to give up some of this. But in New York, the starting salary is twice what it is in the city of Philadelphia. Have we ever done a study that looks at equity and looks at what other departments pay in comparison to Philadelphia?
I'm going to ask Deputy Commissioner Chris Newman to weigh in, as he usually looks at these type of issues in terms of salary comparison and HR related matters. Chris?
Yeah, sure, Commissioner. Council member, we've never done a study comparing our rates to other governments in the country. We do believe that laborers, because I think that's what you're talking about specifically, is sanitation workers. We support sanitation workers getting more money. It's a question of how we actually go about doing that. We have worked with the Office of Human Resources several years ago in terms of making sure that we can maintain a regulation. It's a civil service regulation which allows our sanitation laborers to get an increase in pay, and it's marginal. It's a marginal increase in pay. It's about $1,000 to $2,000 a year if they work on heavy-duty trucks. So if they specifically are doing their primary assignment on heavy-duty trucks, they get an increase in pay. We are looking, and we have looked for ways to increase pay beyond that. We've talked to the Finance Department about this in the past, and the Office of Human Resources, as well as the Managing Director's Office. Those things would actually require labor relations involvement and collective bargaining negotiations. So that's stuff that we'd be looking forward to going forward. But in terms of your initial question as to what we're paying in terms of other government agencies, no, we've never done that.
Well, let me strongly encourage that we go through that process. I think one of the things we learned with COVID and the social unrest is the inequities that exist in some of the departments, and what we're asking them for deliverables do not compare. And I think that, again, we want to move away from your department planning for what it has, but planning for what it needs, given the expectations of the residents in the city of Philadelphia. So let me encourage folks to look at that. I think my colleagues would be surprised at the disparity that exists and would help us to create the political will in the space to treat these workers more appropriately as some of the other cities do. So, let's continue that conversation as part of this budget, because I think it's critical. I want to congratulate you, Commissioner, for bringing in an in-house team to do the paving. I am a big proponent, right, that we can do things cheaper. I learned that when we worked on the lighting program along the L, that when that work was brought in-house, not only did we have the skill sets, we had the capacity, and we did it cheaper. Speak to me what we're doing and how we are going to be able to create better pipelines from your fast track program, for instance, and even the taking care of business. Like, what can we do to better pipeline those folks into your department? You're training them. How do we secure that and make that seamless? I know that your system right now is a lottery system, but we're having people who are supporting the department. Again, we train them. They have certain skill sets. What can we do to better pipeline those folks internally to the department?
Yeah, thank you, Council Member. Yes, Future Track was a great model for doing that. We actually were able to hire people on both the sanitation side and the transportation side by training mostly young people. While we didn't have a strict age requirement, the type of people that we were getting was between the ages of 18 and 24 years old. However, they were very good, and we hired them into the department, and we was able through a track that was created through OHR to be able to do that type of work and give them full-time civil service jobs. So, I wanted to tout that program the most because it was helpful. It was helpful in cleaning out alleys for lights. We helped them become traffic personnel. And those are the type of people that I think were helpful. It gives us a chance to open up jobs and expands the horizon of number of people that can come in, and especially young people who are looking for a way. It gives them a great opportunity in the city government that we didn't have it before. So that Future Track program was tremendous. And so I want to continue to support it as best we can. That is one avenue that was successful.
Yeah, we're looking for, as was mentioned earlier, we need to go back to that alleyway cleaning and some of that work that was done. And so again, before this budget process is over, we really want to look for ways to increase those resources so that we can say to folks, right, once a year we're cleaning every alleyway in the city. This is what it's going to take us to do. We can do it through this program so that it becomes the norm as opposed to just when there are challenges. We understand that, and you have better explained it than anyone else, trash and crime are interrelated, and these access to alleyways are a public safety challenge. And so we should be more aggressive. Again, how do we get you to plan for what we need? Because we know what we need versus you telling us a plan for what you have. But we don't know what we need if we're not saying, there's 19,000 potholes, and we have enough money for 19,000 potholes, and we have the capacity to fill 19 potholes. Like, how do we get this department there? Because I think, along with public safety, this is the most critical basic service that people are like screaming for and want to see, right? And we know the pandemic created all of your challenges as it relates to trash pickup. Lastly, because I heard the bell, has there been any thought about, what we saw during the pandemic was an incredible amount of delivery and of delivery services and boxes for people, this convenient. How are we absorbing, and is there any thought about how can we capture all this the money we have spent because of Amazon and everybody else with these deliveries and the increased trash that you saw related to convenience and people responding to the pandemic? Any thought of that? Any discussions that happen internally?
So we have seen an increased amount of material that has been generated through these type of companies and staying at home deliveries. I think that's probably a conversation between Commerce and our Department of Transportation that we should have with you to determine what, if any, fees or charges that can be assessed based on the increased amount of tonnage and things that they're generating. So I think that's a conversation that we need to have with both Commerce and Transportation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be back for the second round. Thank you, Commissioner.
You're welcome. Thank you, Council Member.
Thank you, Council Member. Council Member Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Williams, I want to join the chorus of thank yous going back even before the pandemic, but particularly during the pandemic when your workforce was one of the signs when they came and collect trash that the city was still open for business, still functional, still operational. I literally remember running to the curb waving at them. That's how tentative and scary the beginning parts of the pandemic were. So Keith Warren and Deputy Commissioner Montanez are my Batman and Robin. I like you, but I love them. So you just need to know the pecking order.
I understand.
I also want to cite when I have these community meetings, we stood at 60th and Columbia, and the big issue wasn't just the death of a 19-year-old boy shot 13 times, but was the fact that it was dark in our driveways, dark on our streets, dark, and that perception of safety was lost in an otherwise pristine neighborhood. They weren't used to gunfights and battles. So your crew came out and addressed those issues in record time, and for that, I am grateful. Now, having said that, I want more. I believe that the citizens, even though in those alleys are private driveways and alleys, deserve public safety. And there should be a light or two in every alley in the city of Philadelphia. So to that degree, we put in a request to find out what the cost of that would be. So I know you already have a program to fix and repair existing poles, which we appreciate. But I want to extend that to alleys, driveways that do not have lights, where unsavory actors pull up, do their business, sell weed, dope, whatever, commit other crimes under the cloak of darkness. And we need to look at our alleys, look at our driveways, and come up with what I mentioned to the MDO yesterday was a wish list to partner with our funders at the state level to say, how can we tap into that $8 billion surplus, with a B, to help out on our public safety issues such as alleys? So pulling together those numbers is critical. I got numbers from your department that suggest there for new lighting, a bulb costs $16, and for the older, less efficient bulbs, $12. But I need to know, how much would it cost to put a pole in an alley where a pole does not exist? So we can get that price tag to our partners up at the state level and challenge them to help us. Also, whether it's in the 8th, the 9th district, 4th district, a lot of our districts have a lot of driveways, and they've fallen into disrepair. There was some preliminary research as to how much it would cost in a driveway to re-concrete it or to put asphalt over it. We need to modernize those numbers, and maybe because of the same thing, public safety, if a first responder has to move down those driveways, they should be safe. If a fire truck rescue wagon is going down those driveways, they shouldn't fall into a pothole big enough to swallow a Volkswagen. And I know the owners of those properties have some responsibility, but we also have some responsibility for public safety. So pulling together those numbers, trying to seek out those state and federal matches of funds is something I'd like us to not just talk about during budget, but to explore so that we can, the bad news is we prepare our budget before the state, before they finish and finalize theirs. But the good news is we prepare our budget before the state so we can add the request to their budget line items. So Senator Hughes, Senator Williams last Friday challenged me to say, well, you can't expect us to give you something if you've not asked for it. I am not letting them challenge us like that. You're a football guy. You know when the Monarchs come after your crew, you rise up. So I'd like to follow suit. I'd like to work with the administration to pull together those numbers, to pull together those partnerships, and actually take them to task on helping Philadelphia. I did an interview, and I'll close on this, that, we don't get a lot of help from, I'm not going to say the Philadelphia delegation, but other parts of the delegation. When we ask for sensible gun laws, they tell us no. When we ask for flavored tobacco restrictions, they tell us no. But yet we send them $1, they send us back 73 cents worth of services. We need to ask for more. We need to coordinate better. We need to work with our Philadelphia delegation in the House and in the Senate to say, here's 10 things: bridges, roads, alleys, driveways, gun violence, that you can fund, that can take some of the financial burden off of the taxpayers in Philly. So I look forward to working with you. I think you're a rock star. I remember one short dumping incident on Marion Avenue, which is notorious. The individuals dropped maybe 500 tires. You remember that, yep. Commissioner?
Yes, sir.
And then had the nerve to come out and tell you, well, fine me then. I don't care about a fine. I mean, arrogantly said that. But when you put that $50 per tire on him, it made his knees buckle. Right. And what I hear from my colleagues is that we need to make the squeeze worth the juice.
That's it. Yes. Thank you, Councilmember. We look forward to having that conversation with all of those issues, and we will certainly work with our department to get the information you need to ask that question about getting funding for the city of Philadelphia.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair.
Councilmember Thomas?
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Commissioner. Good morning to your entire team. How are you doing, sir?
Good morning, sir. How you doing today?
I'm good. I just want to start by thanking you and your team. I'm probably the office that calls you the most and tweets you the most and texts you the most about illegal dumping and other issues that I know you face on a consistent basis. So I just want to start by thanking you and your team and appreciate you responding to me even while you were on vacation. I heard somebody's out of town today. That's pretty normal for your office to still be responsive and sharing and communicating with us even when you're not around. So thank you for that. My first question deals with the issue of crossing guards. I heard you talk about it a little bit briefly. I didn't hear my colleagues ask too many questions. I've been in and out, so I apologize if I'm being repetitive. But talk to us a little bit about what's going on with that transition and what are you doing to make sure that those folks are going to be comfortable under your department?
Sure. Thanks, council member. We just briefly talked about it in our testimony. We have been meeting quite frequently with the administration, their union, and the crossing guards to talk about our plans for a smooth transition and how operations would move forward. Deputy Commissioner Chris Newman has been working very closely on a day-to-day basis with the program. We are in the process of actually recruiting to hire a director for the program, but I think that we are headed in the right direction. We want to make sure that we do this right. We understand that they're very nervous in reference to a big move like this, but we also know the importance of their jobs and responsibilities in protecting our children every day. So we are committed 100%, 110% to ensure that we make a smooth transition. Chris, I'm going to let you then give an update on some of the things that we're doing in terms of training, recruitment, and ultimately the operations and how we want to support our program.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, Councilmember. So for our crossing guard program, in terms of the transition plan, the most important thing to sort of point out with this is it's a phased approach. We are not going to take over the full program automatically as like we're flipping a switch on July 1st. It's going to be phased in. The first part of the phased approach is hiring. And right now we're targeting taking over hiring of crossing guards right around June. The second piece will likely be training. And what we want to do is we want to put together a comprehensive training program that'll be about 2 weeks long. We've been looking at best practices in other governmental jurisdictions, particularly in Washington, D.C. They have a 2-week program. We want to sort of replicate that here in the city of Philadelphia. After that, we're hoping to take over payroll. Now, the payroll piece is a little complicated because the police department has their own specific payroll system that they use. So there's some complications to that, but we're hoping that would be the next part of it.
Can we get this plan in writing, like how you're talking about phases? I mean, it sounds like you have a comprehensive idea of what this transition is going to look like and feel like. Have there been conversations with the union and the workers so that they're feeling comfortable with the transition and the process?
We're literally meeting with the union every month to give them an update and answer their questions. So, and those meetings have been going very well in terms of the relationship with them. I know they have some concerns and some questions. The biggest thing from their perspective is they're concerned about their locations being changed in terms of their assignments and their safety in terms of the partnership with the police department. And both of those things are being covered. On the one end, we're not moving people. We're keeping them where they are. So if they have an assignment, we're not moving them to another location. And on the other end, we're working on literally developing a memorandum of agreement with the police department so that this phased approach can work. And even beyond the phased approach, having a very strong partnership with them to make sure that from a safety perspective, the crossing guards are covered.
That sounds great, Chris. Thank you. Well, my time is limited, so I have to transition to another area. But please, can you provide us that phased plan in writing and continue to have that dialogue with the workers? Because you know how it is when there's a certain level of uncertainty. As the chair of the Streets and Services Committee, I'm actually excited that they're coming under the Streets Department because of the close relationship that my office has with Carlton and the rest of the entire team over there. So for us, we're hoping that this is going to be a good thing, and it sounds like you're doing the same as well. So thank you for that. Commissioner, a couple other one of the biggest issues that I've been advocating for is looking at the 12% of roads that produce 80% of car accidents. I know that you're not necessarily involved in infrastructure-based issues, but if you could just take 30 seconds to talk to us about what your office and your department has been doing to address a lot of the hit and run issues that we've been seeing in the city of Philadelphia. We definitely appreciate you putting that on the record.
Yes, we've been working very closely with Otis and Vision Zero Network. Kelly Yemen is our director of that program. Our department works hand in hand with her in reference to identifying ways to reduce traffic fatalities along the high injury network. And you're right, there's only about 12 or 13% of the roadways that produce the highest amount of fatalities in the city of Philadelphia. That's one of the priorities when we do things like, traffic calming initiatives, speed cushions. Those are the things that we look at first to ensure that we're dedicating our resources to those areas. I don't know if Kelly is on right now to give you a kind of a 10, 30-second snapshot, but our department is dedicated funding. We're dedicated staff and resources and ultimately maintenance of those areas to ensure that we try to reduce those fatalities down to zero. So that's a big initiative.
Yeah, we're getting something in writing from Mike Carroll and his entire team over there. So, we just wanted you to put on the record your role in that and making sure that we have that continued effort and coordination to be able to address that issue. Because I know it takes some time, but there are a lot of families who spend a lot of time advocating to my office and to, I'm sure, to you and other members of the executive team to push for not just the technology that we need to address it and runs, but the investment in infrastructure. So thank you for that one.
I just want to add one quick thing. The red light camera program is also something that's huge, and that's a part of that high injury network along Roosevelt Boulevard. So those are the type of things that we're going to continue to support and push throughout the city of Philadelphia.
And we could put on the record that has had some success, and we want to replicate it too. So we like to grill you with the bad stuff, which I know we do a great job of on city council, but we also like to try to compliment you when we see some levels of success, and I think that that's an example of that. We still have more work to do, but again,
absolutely,
some levels of success. My last question, Commissioner, and if you don't know the answers to this right now, it's okay, because I don't think I've ever asked you anything like this, and I want to see if I can get you on the record with this one. I'm working with the managing director's office as well as the police department, and we're trying to put together a coalition around traffic enforcement related issues. We're looking at the idea of using and relying on technology to be the main mechanisms to enforce motor vehicle code violations that are not a public safety hazard. What are your thoughts on that, and what impact do you think that will have on the streets department and your work you're doing? I know you are with illegal dumpers and things like that. I heard Majority Leader talk about some of those issues earlier. Just what are your thoughts on that? And at that point, my time is up.
Yeah, we're very supportive of using technology. We know we don't have the manpower in either streets or police to be everywhere at all times, but anywhere we can place cameras at locations, anywhere we can use technology to, like the traffic calming, the timers on red lights, to notify pedestrians when to cross the street because a police officer can't be there. I think all of those things are extremely helpful in public safety when it comes down to transportation related issues. So yes, we're very supportive of using technology.
Jennifer and I already talked about it.
Okay.
Our engineers are working very closely with staff to do that. So we're looking forward to having those conversations with you as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My time is up. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Richardson? Are you available?
Yes, I am here, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And thank you so much, Commissioner Williams, and to your entire team, particularly to Deputy Commissioner Warren, who I think I email, call, or reach out to every day for an issue. I even did so this morning, I will say. And to Crystal Jacobs Shipman and Noel and everybody on your team, we are certainly so appreciative of you, of the partnership and the work that you do together with us to serve our constituents. Know that it does not go unnoticed. I can even recall one day I was driving, coming south back towards downtown. I was way up, and I'm not going to name the street, but every corner, every middle of the block, it was something there that needed to be picked up, and it was not trash day. And so after a while, I just stopped calling because I was calling every other second, and I just took note of every single address on my way all the way up back down to City Hall area and sent it over to your department, and you all have been responsive. So I just want to say thank you for that work and the work that we will continue to do on behalf of our constituents together. Now, obviously, I'm chair of City Council's Committee on the Environment, and so I wanted to ask a question that's, climate related, but also related to environmental justice, particularly as we think about our workforce. And I'm so grateful to our workforce and all of our sanitation workers for the work they've done over the last several years, and always the work they've always done. And I heard you state earlier in speaking with our Madam Majority Leader about the work we've done together around ensuring that our sanitation workers have enough boots. After I went out with the crew down in Kensington, and I simply said I want to go on a tour, but you all sent me down to Kensington, and I'm so thankful and grateful for that experience to be with them. It is very hard work. It's not easy at all. And so I wanted to talk about something that I heard Secretary of Labor Marty Walsh talk about. He mentioned it when he came to Philadelphia recently, but it's something that the Biden administration recognized relative to significant risks that extreme heat poses to workers. And they called on OSHA to launch that rulemaking process to develop a workplace heat standard and to create an enforcement initiative on any heat-related hazards, particularly for workers. And so I just wanted to know how you all, from a streets department perspective, were looking at that particular rule around heat exposure for workers, and how you all are evaluating those new policies and procedures, and how you're working with DC 33 and the leadership at DC 33 to ensure that we're protecting workers from heat-related illnesses.
Yes, that's great. I'm going to ask Deputy Commissioner Chris Newman to also weigh in because he oversees health and safety issues related to our workers. I will say as a general comment that the toughest part of the job for our sanitation workers, if you ask them, is to work out in the heat. And Philadelphia has high indices of heat that exasperate over sometimes 100 degrees. You can imagine the difficulty in terms of the work that they have to do, as you experience directly firsthand. Thank you for that. The type of equipment they wear, ultimately the time of day they to collect trash, all of those things that we look at when it comes down to heat-related emergencies. We definitely monitor when temperatures are in the red level. I think they have different zones in which they classify, in which the city declares. And when it's out there, we make sure our employees are well hydrated. Ultimately, we try to get the trash up as early as possible so that in the dog days of the summer and the climax of the heat of the day, they're not exposed to it. But those are the things that we're trying to do to keep them safe. And Chris can ultimately weigh in as well.
Okay, and I say that too because that's when I went out. It was the heat of the summer. I think it was like July or something. So I wanted to know about how you all are looking at that new rule from the Biden administration. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Councilmember. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm actually not familiar with the Biden administration rule that you're talking about, so I'll have to look into it. But just echoing what the commissioner just said in terms of what we're doing every summer for our laborers, because they probably have the hardest job in the world, especially in the summer, but just in general, is that we do make sure that the hydration of them takes place, and that becomes pretty much the most important thing during the hot weather days. And if there are indications that an employee is having some problems related to heat, we try to take care of that right away and get them out of their assignment and do something for them.
Okay,
But we'll take a look into that.
Sure, and just circle back to us. It's something new. Like I said, I heard Secretary Walsh talk about it when he came to Philadelphia the last time. And I just wanted to ensure from a city perspective that we have all of our ducks in a row relative to that new policy and just how we're thinking about our sanitation workers and workers in general in extreme heat environments. The other piece I wanted to quickly talk about is the bipartisan infrastructure package. And I've talked about this with a number of departments We know that there are a number of grant opportunities available. I'm on the Local Government Advisory Committee for the US EPA, and in fact, I'll be in DC next month to talk about more of these issues. And the EPA, has a program that's included in the infrastructure package that'll be around $75 million for, reduction, reuse, recycle, education, and outreach grants. It's just education and outreach. And local governments are eligible to apply for this opportunity. This particular grant is meant to improve material recycling, recovery, management, and reduction. And so, from that whole circular economy piece in Philadelphia, reducing the amount of waste that is going into our waste stream. And also just the overall effectiveness of a residential and community recycling program through education and through outreach. And so I wanted to, talk about that grant opportunity. Are you all aware of that opportunity? Will you be applying for that opportunity? And how are you thinking about recycling, reducing waste going into our waste stream in general?
Thank you. Yes. And so thanks for bringing that to our attention. First of all, council member, we always appreciate your support. And these issues are very critical to our department and the city when it comes down to managing our waste. Number one, the grant opportunity, I think Kyle probably can discuss whether or not she's interested. She has been aware of it. I know we're very interested in using those funds. She's definitely been the one that directs our 902 and 904 grants. So I'm going to ask Kyle to jump on in a moment to talk about it as well. In general, we did establish a goal with our zero waste and litter goals to be zero waste by 2035. And we have an ambitious plan that we work with our director, Kyle and Scott McGrath, to be able to address food waste. And organics is a big component that we want to attack and address so that we can reduce and get closer to that goal of zero waste. But Kyle, Kyle Lewis, if you can come on and address that grant that's available through the council member's office that she mentioned.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Kyle Lewis. I'm the Recycling Program Director with the Streets Department, and I thank you all for this hearing today. And that is not a grant opportunity that we were aware of. We've been pursuing grants, continued grants through the Recycling Partnership for our recycling program. But as you were speaking, Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson, I certainly took note. And so we'll look into that and see if that's an opportunity that we will pursue. And so thank you for bringing that to our attention.
And I heard the bell, and I will honor the clock, but I will certainly send you over information, Kyle, directly relative to that opportunity. We get them in the weekly digest from the EPA. So I just wanted to make sure that you have that information and that we're going for that opportunity, because it's all around education and information and sort of helping folks to help us with the recycling, because we recognize how expensive it is at this point. And I know we've worked with you and talked about this issue over time. And so I just want to ensure that we have all those opportunities. I'll come back on the second round with my last question, but thank you again to the sanitation department, to your leadership, to all of your workers, to the sanitation workers, DC 33, all of you. We thank you so much. We could never do the work that we do without you. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, council member.
Thank you, council member. I thought you were going to reclaim your time and just keep going on. But one quick question before we go to the second round. We had talked about this a year or so ago, too, about sidewalks and how we deal with sidewalk issues and problems. And I know there was talk about maybe a sidewalk coordinator. Is that something that Streets Department is looking to do in the future, to try to come in and see how we deal with the issues of sidewalks that aren't safe to walk on and the challenges we have with enforcement and or compliance on that issue?
So yeah, I am aware that we have had some discussions on trying to identify someone. How far that discussion has gone, I'm not sure. I'll have to follow up with that council member That is a big issue. Sidewalks currently right now are the responsibility of the property owners. I understand that many people are challenged with trying to address this as a whole. So I think this is an issue that we probably need to have further discussion on, and to see what we can do as a city collectively to try to help and assist in this area.
Okay, I think the start would have some type of formation of a coordinator, somebody to start that process now to get that up and running so that we could see what it is that we maybe as council could help with and what resources are necessary to deal with that challenge. All right, I want to go on to the second round. Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, just when we thought no one was watching our exciting budget hearings, I got text messages from the Mount Airy Community Council and the Longcrest Civic Association telling me I missed some thank yous during my first round. So I think I did hit Rich Montanez, but Farouk Scott, Smitty and Ray, Keisha Duckett, Patrice Newble, Christian Del Rossi, Chris Fontaine, Nick Sinceruk, Mark Washington, Michelle Simmons, Scott McGrath, and Wesa Chi and David D. Thank you all so much. I listen to my constituents, Commissioner. I don't play any games with those people.
I see, and thank you and those people for recognizing them. I'm sure my employees are very thankful and grateful.
Sure. I want to go back to two issues. One, you heard me talking about those companies, businesses that dispose of their trash illegally, hence, building on our large problem with illegal dumping. But I also want to put the other side on the record, Commissioner. You remember when I first got to council, one of the first pieces of legislation we worked on was requiring businesses who had dumpsters to have those dumpsters enclosed and locked. And listen, for the sake of many of them who do it the right way and they close them in and they lock them, we've seen folks literally get the big lock color and break the chain, on the dumpster area, and then they begin to compound the dumping that these private companies, many doing business on our neighborhood commercial quarters, that they already have to pay for, and they're not dumping at our sites. They pay for private trash collection. So I also want members of the viewing public to note that many of the businesses, and I've been unapologetic about advocacy for neighborhood-based small business, and particularly on our neighborhood commercial quarters, they're doing the right thing, paying their fair share, but they're being impacted by this as well. So I want you to comment on that, but I also want you to comment on something that you and we had a little tit-to-two about a couple of years ago. And this was the issue of trash cans. Now, depending on which commercial quarter you go to in the 9th Councilmatic District, they're either telling you to remove the wire baskets or the big bellies, or they're saying we want the wire baskets, or the big bellies. Tell us where we are. Does it just differ based on the region that we're in the city of Philadelphia? We are always going to advocate for both of them because they've worked in different areas in our district. And is there any modern technology relative to waste baskets, the big bellies strongly compacting more that we don't know about? So if you could comment on those two things, I'd be grateful.
Sure, and thank you, council member. The trash cans are a double-edged sword, as you mentioned before. Their intentions are to do good and keep litter off the streets of Philadelphia. Sometimes they become eyesores for the community because, unfortunately, people believe that they're used for dumping locations, and they become overrun with household trash, which is not the intent of a waste basket. It is supposed to be used for someone to place litter and trash that they've accumulated along the way into. So we work with community residents, and I think you hit it right on the nose. When we have a strong community advocacy program that's willing to partner with us to maintain those, they work extremely well. So we have, in many neighborhoods, CDCs that say, hey, we're going to make sure that people don't dump on them. We're going to make sure that they don't become an eyesore. Then they're certainly effective, and we're definitely supportive of placing them there. There's a cost, and we're looking at things like the infrastructure fund to try to get additional ones in our neighborhoods and through the cities. We're also looking at grant programs to try to get ones on commercial corridors because we think they do play a huge difference. Big bellies is our choice of equipment because of the technology. We can monitor them via a website to see when they're full. Ultimately, we can make sure that they don't overflow with trash. So I think it's very important that we continue to invest in that. Yes.
The small business owners, Commissioner, who are doing it the right way, but people end up are dumping there. Any comment for those people who are doing it right but are being victimized as well?
Yeah, that's tough, especially during the pandemic. They were kind of targets for people that bring their trash to when we were challenged with the excess trash. The best way that I can continue to encourage them is to try to secure that location. Notify us. Our sweep unit goes out when that occurs, so they won't get a citation for them actually not having a clean dumpster when they can show us that they keep it clean. Others dump on there, and we can probably try to identify who the violators are, because usually they come from around the community or business in that area, and if we can identify them, we can cite them and not the property owner and try to address it.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. And Michelle Brisbane, our encroachment supervisor, I forgot you. Charge it to my head and not my heart. Thank you, Commissioner.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Gautier?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello again, Commissioner. I want to ask some questions about dumping. I want to follow up on Councilmember Dom's questions to you about allowing smaller contractors to use our sanitation centers. I support that idea, and I also am wondering about if we could also have more flexible rules for the drop-off of bulk trash for residents, which might also help with some of our dumping issues. What do you think about that?
Sure, that's something that I think we were asked to take a look at to see if for small business contractors we can look at a fee. I think all those are viable options. So I'm open. I'm very open to that because if it eliminates us having to go pick it up out on taxpayers' dime and we can charge a small fee, I think that makes a lot of sense. Ultimately, we have to be careful of what we collect at drop-off centers because it does have, we can't take certain hazardous materials, certain items are required by state to be recycled from contractors. Those are the things that we have to pay attention to and have to put protocols, but I don't think they're insurmountable, that's something that we can at least consider. If it gets too big, we probably will have to look at additional locations. And that's sometimes tough in a developing city like the city of Philadelphia, where people don't want, they say NIMBY, not in my backyard. But ultimately, if they become too full, we would have to probably look at additional locations where that could take place and happen. But we're certainly open to that conversation.
What would be the timing for those kind of policy changes?
So I think some of the things we have already tried to be very flexible with. So we used to then allow trucks into the drop-off center that were full. And many of them came with things that we do collect on households. I think we need to re-educate the public on what we do collect. We do take small amounts of material at the curb line that's packaged right. But I think when it gets beyond a household small project that they would do, then we need to consider that option as well. I think we can do that fairly quickly. I don't want to overcommit and not have the infrastructure in place to be able to accept it and become such a big program that we can't keep up with it. But I think we can do this pretty quickly if we start having a discussion and look at the policies of it.
Okay. What is the process to collect and dispose of illegally dumped tires, and how much does this currently cost the city to handle?
Last year, we collected about 200,000 tires. It's about $1 per tire. So it costs us about $200,000 every year to collect illegally dumped material in the city of Philadelphia. Tires, that's dumped. We do have a processing contract. I'll let Keith, Deputy Commissioner Warren, come on and explain to you where we take them once we collect them. We have dedicated trucks because we can't throw it in the landfill. Again, that's one of the things that we don't collect at landfills. We have to have a designated truck to take it to a processing facility. Deputy Commissioner Warren, could you talk briefly to the council member about where they're located and how the process goes?
Good afternoon. This is Deputy Commissioner Keith Warren.
Good afternoon.
The tire processing plant is located in Chester, and so we take all the tires there.
Okay. Do you have an idea of how much it would cost to clear the current backlog of illegal tire dumping inquiries, and is there a plan for this?
I think the short dump crew that we're adding does include additional staff to be able to adjust tires as well. The 2 additional crews will ultimately give us twice as many resources to be able to get them much faster. I think we are challenged with keeping up with our current service level agreement when it comes down to dumping and tires that are constantly dumped around the city. So I think those crews that the administration is supporting in this budget will help us tremendously in making sure that we get those up quickly as possible.
But I mean, the fact remains we have many sites, many in my district, where there are just piles of tires, right? And we've seen last year that they're highly combustible. They can catch on fire, which also creates a huge public safety hazard. What is the city's plan to get up these tires? Like, do we have a sense of what it would take to really do this and to clear, these sites?
We can get you the number of crews that we need in terms of addressing them and cleaning them up. I think one of the things that was initiated through City Council originally by the Zero Waste to Litter Cabinet was the tire legislation program where they calls the dealers to be registered so that we can start tracking them and preventing them. I think that is the long-term goal and plan for the city to be able to stop these dumpers from happening in the first place.
Okay. And I have to ask you, since I have you here, this will be my last question. What is the status of installation for the cameras for the 3rd District dumping sites that my office allocated our ITEF funds for, and we've been waiting for over a year?
So
you can answer that.
Good news on that front. Half of them, I think we purchased 17 for your area. Half of them are currently up right now. And the other remaining of them will be up by the end of the month. So that we knew that question was coming. And I told Rich to make sure that we had the timeline and table for those cameras to be installed, because you're right. We apologize for the delays. We worked out the issues with OIT in terms of licensing. So they'll be up fully operational by the end of the month.
So they're up. Are they on?
10 of them are on. 7 of them have to be installed. And okay. So 10 of them are working right now. Half of them are up and on. Yes.
But we'll be in good shape by the end of the month.
Yes, you'll be fully up and running by the end of the month.
Thank you so much. And thank you to Deputy Commissioner Montanez. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Sanchez. Are you available?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you, Commissioner. Want to talk a little bit around some of the policy again around planning for what we need versus what we have. Has there been any discussions about, and I know there was a successful pilot that was done in Temple. We definitely want to work on some issues in Kensington, given the challenges in Kensington. Has there been any thought of, if we gave people trash cans, as is done in many of our suburban community, what a cost and what potential impact that would have on our litter index?
Yeah, actually, a few years ago, and I'm sure that this cost may be inflated a little up higher because of inflation now. We looked at similar to what programs do out in the suburbs, which is provide trash cans and then limit the amount of debris to that can, which greatly reduces litter, overflowing cans, baskets, ripped open trash cans. It cost about $8 million to do an entire area at the time, entire city, like a city like Philadelphia. And then it was a maintenance contract program with Rarick Pacific. I think that was the name of the company that we looked at to try to do this type of program. Scott McGrath can verify that as well. We tried it. We tried a pilot program in Temple, as you know. In some neighborhoods, it worked great. In some areas around the transient population, it didn't, because they abused it and they threw trash all around it. And ultimately, that doesn't work because they left trash out during the week. But the residents that was just north of that did great with it. They kept their trash can in a neat and orderly fashion. I saw this program when we went to Baltimore, up in certain areas of the city, and they didn't have a place to store trash. I think that's the biggest reason why we see residents illegally dumping, because they don't want to keep it in their house. They don't have a yard where we collect from. It's very difficult to travel from. So giving them that option to have it stored on a sidewalk in a neat and orderly fashion does work, but you're going to have cooperation from communities and neighborhoods. If they abuse it, it then has the ultimate reverse reversal effect where it becomes sloppy litter dumping neighborhoods. So we had to take those cans away from that block, but most of the other areas did very well with it. So I think it's a viable program that we could look at.
Yeah, I think we want to change the culture around Philadelphia. I think we're going to have to be really bold. And, you've heard from the hearing you participated last week. Again, outside of public safety, this trash situation is one of the complaints that we hear the most. And I really do think we need to figure out not only piloting this, but what would it take for the city in its entirety to do this. My understanding, again, from counties and other folks that do it, then you can properly buy trucks and other materials that better would add efficiency, right, to the trash pickup if we had a standardized way of doing this. So, again, I'm interested in want to work with you and pilot something, again, in some of our more increased litter index areas. Want to talk a little bit, I know there's been a lot of discussion around LED lighting, again, all of the non-public safety police related issues. Can Commissioner Montanez speak to how long will it take us to be, fully LED city, and particularly how do we prioritize those neighborhoods where we have a public safety challenge? Where are we in that?
Good morning, or good afternoon. I apologize, I'm not in Philadelphia. So as the Commissioner Carlton Williams mentioned, we are doing a project with the ESCO. The current timetable for the ESCO is proposed 30 to 36 months project to convert the entire city streetlight system to LEDs.
And are those prioritized based on public safety zones?
So they will be prioritized based on an audit that the ESCO is going to be doing. And also we're going to overlay the high injury network and the high crime districts at the same time on top of it.
Okay, so you will be forwarding that to council, to council members, so we know what's coming up in our areas?
Yes, we actually have a hearing about the ESCO the 18th. So we will be in front of you guys to bring up the options that we're proposing, and at the same time, we will come in front of you once the ESCO is fully on board with the plan on how we roll out through the city.
Okay, thank you. I know I heard the bill. So, Commissioner, as it relates to I asked this question earlier, and I just want to clarify because I want to make sure that you guys submit this. Can you demonstrate to us in your budget how your budget will meet the expected calls that we have in the city? So, I talked about potholes. Can you, I guess this was supposed to be a zero-based budgeting that never happened in the city. So excuse me for asking this, but I think in this department in particular, this is one of the few years where we're making a significant increase, and I want to advocate for more. Can you, give us a chart that says, this is the complaints that we've gotten 311 in the city, and this is what we're budgeting for, and if those things are correlated or where the gaps may exist as it relates to that? I think that would be helpful to us as we move forward with this budget. Again, thank you very much, Commissioner.
Absolutely. Thank you, Council Member.
Thank you, Council Member. I think our last Council Member for questions, unless we see another one, is Council Member Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I wanted to just ask a couple questions, and the remaining questions I have, I'll submit for the record. The first is if we could get a quick update on the citywide zero waste goal that was set, and sort of where we are with that, and also the organics diversion feasibility study.
Yes, Scott McGrath is our environmental planning director. He's on the line right now, and we certainly can give you an update and provide that data for you.
Okay.
Yes, good morning, or almost good afternoon. I guess good afternoon, Council Member. I'm Scott McGrath, Environmental Planning Director, Streets Department. Yes, as the Commissioner said, we have been working with the Sustainability Office over the last 6 months on kind of reconfiguring how we approach zero waste goals. And we've been working closely with Christy Knapp and her team and working toward a goal of kind of redeveloping some very specific goals targeting different materials and items that can be done in a practical manner on a kind of a 3 or 5 year time frame. We're also we continue to work with waste management on trying to develop a process with them, which is part of our existing contract, to test the feasibility of extracting organics from mixed waste. They've worked with Tempo, and the water department has also been involved in this. They've done some benchmark testing with this process, and some of the results have been promising. So we're continuing our discussions with the water department and waste management to look at ways that we can potentially implement something like this on a larger scale. We'll probably have to start it small, but it is starting to show some promise from a technical standpoint. So we're hoping in the next few years we can develop this at a larger scale.
Okay, that'll be great. But we look forward to continuing to work with you, Scott, and with the entire department, and just keep us updated on the progress. I only ask because, we seek to support the Office of Sustainability in ensuring that they have the necessary resources to adequately be able to work with you all on all of these initiatives. Because, typically what will happen is all of these lofty goals are set, but you all don't have the resources to get it done, both from a streets department perspective, but also from a sustainability office perspective, where they have to coordinate with everybody, not just the streets department. So we just want to be in the loop so we can advocate for the necessary funding for all of you to be able to coordinate in a way that makes sense for these goals that have been set. I have additional questions that I will submit for the record. I have to say, I'm chair of council's committee on the environment, and so I get a number of the questions and concerns in the posts, and people tag me on the posts, and I'm inundated when I go out in the streets. But I married into a family from the city of Chester in Pennsylvania, actually one of the largest families in the city of Chester. And so they're all obviously very concerned about the waste management contract, and just wanted to be up in the loop on any decisions that are made there, particularly if there's any success or, any opportunities in the contract renewal process to look at how we can do things differently from the perspective of the city of Philadelphia, as it has great environmental impacts on the very small city of Chester in the Commonwealth. So thank you very, very much for your work. I look forward to continuing to work with all of you. I just have to say thank you, because we really could not do this work without you. We could not respond to our constituents that reach out to us constantly without the help of your team. And when we call, it's not that you all just say, okay, we got it. You got it, and you get it done. And we appreciate that. Okay, so I just wanted to say thank you to the team, and we look forward to continuing to work with you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Council Member. Any other questions? If we can, just send them to Council President's office. We could forward them over to Streets. We would like to start with the next panel. Mr. McDermott, can you please call the next person to testify for fire? Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, and thank all the council members. We appreciate you guys. Thank you.
The next witness to testify is Fire Commissioner Adam Teal.
Good afternoon, Mr. Teal. Just state your name for the record, and you can proceed with your testimony. Thank you.
Adam Teal, I'm the Fire Commissioner for the City of Philadelphia. Good morning, Chair Squilla and members of City Council. Joining me today are our First Deputy Fire Commissioner Craig Murphy and our Chief of Staff Tara Moore. I'm pleased to provide testimony on the Fire Department's fiscal year 2023 operating budget. The mission of the Philadelphia Fire Department is to serve the public by providing comprehensive all-hazard prevention, risk reduction, and emergency response, and to ensure the health and safety of the PFD's members. Our plans for fiscal year 2023 include executing a FEMA smoke alarm grant to install 20,000 traditional and 192 adaptive smoke alarms, collaborate with external city partners to create a multidisciplinary alternative EMS unit, AR3, for responding to emergency behavioral health calls, develop and deliver critical building construction training funded through a FEMA grant, work with Fleet to continue replacing aged frontline apparatus and DPP to improve stations, working with partner offices such as the Office of Human Resource and the Budget Office to continue hiring new firefighter and paramedic cadet classes, and creating a unified 911 center with police dispatch by relocating the Fire Communications Center to 400 North Broad Street. And with that, Chair, we'll stand by for your questions.
Commissioner?
Mr. Chair, we can hear you now. We can hear you now.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you. Thank you for your testimony. We do have some questions. I just have one quick question. I received an email about from the Marine Unit about a dock that was being donated and installed, and it seemed that there was some holdup or something. Is that something that is obviously supported by the fire department in order to have a new dock located there? Do you know what the holdup is of why that donation or installation has not happened?
Council member, we certainly need a facility there, need a dock there. There's never been a dock. Right now, there's sort of a tree log that acts as a bumper between the seawall and the Marine Unit. I'd have to defer any questions about the specifics of the donation to DPP and or the law department.
Okay, all right, but we do need that dock there, so hopefully we can figure out whatever the challenges are in an amenable time and get that dock installed. There's several questions by council members, so I'm going to defer to them, and then I'll come up at the end to answer. It looks like in order we have council member Gilmore Richardson, Parker, and then Sanchez, and then we'll go from there. So Councilmember Richardson.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And thank you so much, Commissioner Teal, and to your team, to all the deputy commissioners, and to Derek Bomer and your entire staff. We certainly appreciate each and every one of you. And I wanted to start by talking specifically about one of the darkest days we have ever had as a city with the Fairmount fire. And I have to put on the record that we appreciate not only the response, we recognize how difficult that scene was, but the way you all showed up to the services and represented on behalf of the city, I know was difficult, how you interface with the family throughout the process. I'm going to say, as someone who is tangentially related to them, thank you on behalf of the family. What you all did was incredible. It was phenomenal service, and you treated the family as if they were your family. So I wanted to say thank you from the bottom of our hearts, from my heart and theirs to yours. Secondly, I wanted to quickly talk about the firefighter preference. The 3-point preference that firefighter 1 position receives for all qualified applicants that complete the School District of Philadelphia's Fire and EMS Career and Technical Education Program. Do you know offhand how many applicants have used this preference? And how can we continue to work together with all of you to engage young people in the program and encourage them to apply to the department?
Councilmember, we don't have that number. We'd have to get that from the Department of Human Resources, which we'll certainly do, and make sure you get that. We're doing everything we can from a recruiting perspective. We actually exceeded our despite COVID, we exceeded our recruitment target for actually getting out there. Thanks to Councilmember Parker and a lot of other partners, we have the 7800 Ogons facility very active right now, filled with explorers. We're having great experiences with the Randolph program. And, look, I think that we actually are being affected by the tight labor market right now. So, we're not seeing the numbers that we've seen in the past. We're still good as far as numbers for firefighter EMTs. Paramedics is another story, but that's a national shortage as well. But we're really doing everything we can to, to recruit, hire, and train folks here for the fire department. So, we do hope that people will look at that program, all of these programs, whether it's the Explorers, Randolph. We have a lot of great programs out there, a lot of great folks who are working to make that happen. But as far as the actual specifics of the points and the civil service issues, those are questions for DHR.
Sure. And so relative to vacancies and the work that you all have to do, I've heard you talk often about just how busy you are and the sheer volume of work in comparison to other large U.S. cities. What would you say is the most challenging position, in your department to fill right now?
Councilmember, it's a great question. I'm not sure I could pick just one. I would say that the two that are most challenging, certainly paramedics. And that is, again, that's a national issue, and dispatchers, which is also a national issue. Our Fire Communications Center folks work incredibly hard. They're just amazing. The first of our first responders, 24/7, 365. And that's a really difficult position to recruit, hire, train, and retain folks. And then paramedics, as I mentioned, that's a challenge for every fire department that I know of, every department that delivers EMS. And, we're continuing to look at options for hiring single role EMTs and making sure that we have a pathway for them to become what we call advanced life support providers, and then, continuing to skill up, paramedic, supervisor ranks, et cetera. So we're hoping to, get through some things with OHR and the Civil Service Commission so we can take advantage of some programs that we've created, and also go out there and continue to do the community EMT programs. We had a couple of really successful pilots right before and at the very beginning of the COVID pandemic. I'm hoping that we'll be able to have some of those funding partners line up again to help us do those community EMT programs, because I think that's a great way for us to be able to get folks on board as either firefighter EMTs, EMT advanced, or EMT paramedics.
Okay, great. That's helpful. And the last question I had was around smoke detectors. And so, after you have pretty large fire events, you usually get a significant uptick in calls for individuals who are looking for smoke alarms and smoke detectors. So if you could just give us an update on sort of where we are with that.
Yeah, Councilor, that's exactly what happened after the tragedy in Fairmount. We had already installed in December of 21, we installed more than 1,000 smoke alarms around the city. When that tragedy occurred, we saw a spike in requests from 311, and then we had another really tragic incident in Kensington a week or so ago, and we also saw a spike after that. So we had a backlog from COVID of smoke alarm installations that was around 5,000. We have completely cleared that backlog because of these high-profile events. And keep in mind, we had fire desks. We had 5 fire desks between the Fairmount and the Kensington fire, tragically, all around the city. None of those were multiple events. But, we have a pending queue of around 3,000, 3,500 installation requests. All of those really have come since January 5th. And, rest assured, in between answering roughly 1,000 on average emergency incidents every day, our firefighters are out there. Our community action teams are out there. Our fire prevention division is out there installing smoke alarms as fast as we can. And also with our partners like the Red Cross, we just did the Sound the Alarm event with them last Friday. So it's really all hands on deck to get those smoke alarms out there. And again, we would encourage folks to call 311. We can't guarantee when we'll be there to install it. There are a lot of variables that go into that. These are the same folks that are going to those fires and answering those emergency medical calls. But we will get there just as we've done and make sure we keep up with that and get smoke alarms out there.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that update, Commissioner. And again, thank you for your work and to all the deputy commissioners and your team, not only for your support of our community members in their darkest hours, but also for the work that you all do. You were at a conference recently. You all have just shown up and have really been there, and we really appreciate the work that you do. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councilmember. Councilmember Parker?
Thank you so much, Chairman Squilla and Commissioner Teal. Let me lend my voice to the choir. Councilmember Gilmore Richardson was Johnny on the spot. You know, the public and we as lay people, you know, we run from fire and run from that danger. Call you when we need you to help us during our most challenging hours. And you and members of your team and our firefighters, EMTs, paramedics, they show up on the spot. And I know you don't get thank you a lot, Commissioner, but I want to say thank you. I want to go back to Councilmember Gilmore Richardson's line of questioning relative to the smoke alarms, and just want to say, one, thank you so much for ramping up the installation. I do want to recommend, though, that the Philly Counts group that helped during the census commish, who they were going door to door in neighborhoods that we were having a real challenge with getting people to complete the census, and they were really helpful. So if you haven't, that is a vehicle, if in fact possible, that I would include in that process to help you. I also, a special thanks to my team and one of my newest members, Dylan Mahoney. He's formerly a council member, Johnson's office. He, as a new member of my team, paid attention to detail, and they know that I am adamant about acknowledging publicly the work of my engines. And, you know, since I've been here, you said, well, I know I'm going to hear her engine numbers. So for 63, 64, 70, 71, and 73, which is where I live in a neighborhood that I've been in all my life. Special shout out to each, you know, of you. We appreciate the work that you do, and we'll try to get some donuts or something around to you whenever we can. Commissioner, walk back the room for me, if you will. You mentioned it. Talk to us about what's happening at 78th and Ogans Avenue. When we started there, we were thinking about workforce development. We were thinking about the pipeline. All of a sudden, we're in the midst of COVID. We are advocating for neighborhood-based, you know, locations that people can trust, and encouraging folks who were really, really questioning whether or not they should get vaccinated. And you and your department stood up that center, and not just that it was a center in a neighborhood, but it was in pristine condition. It was clean, the structure, the organization. How did you do it? And tell the people in the city of Philadelphia what's happening with the fire department at 78th and Ogans Avenue.
Councilmember, appreciate that. I mean, really a team effort that sort of, I guess, arose from a very brief conversation that we had, you know, about our need. Our fire academy is very constrained. You know, there's a master plan that, you know, kind of reflects we need $80 to $90 million of capital funding to get our fire academy up in the Northeast in the condition it needs to be for us to get to the throughput of training firefighters, paramedics, EMTs that we need to really, you know, catch up and build the department to the level that we need to offset overtime and also deal with service demand. So we really had a requirement for another facility, another place that we could get out. And we also had, you know, our recruitment office used to be in a high-rise building on the, you know, 7th or 8th floor of a high-rise building where nobody could find it, you know, and those folks were out there on the streets every day driving around. You know, there's a reason that the military recruits, if you go up North Broad, you'll see, you know, military recruiters at street level, you know, where they need to be for walk-in traffic. So the real genesis of this was to put our recruitment unit out where they needed to be, you know, in the community, in the neighborhood where folks could access them. We also moved our EMS regional office out there. That office actually, on behalf of the state, the Commonwealth, regulates the private ambulance providers that do interfacility transports. And we also, this was heartbreaking for me, we had to turn away candidates for our Explorers program the first year that I got here. And that was just heartbreaking. So I didn't want to ever have to do that again. And it took us a couple years to get this facility put together. Again, Mount Airy Church of God in Christ has been great to us as our landlords. The health department is a principal partner there. You and your office, our former Deputy Commissioner Shanique McCall, so many people threw into this effort. It was so appropriate that we kicked that off with a vaccination event, and we've continued to do that. I mean, we're still there. We've been doing vaccinations off and on, but now it really has transitioned a lot to a training facility to support our explorers, and we're excited to start community EMT programs there as well. Potentially also, using that as a location to train single role EMTs that we're going to move through to become advanced EMTs to help address our shortage of advanced life support providers.
Well, thank you so very much, Commissioner, just for getting that on the record for the benefit of the people of Philadelphia, so that that high-rise building that you referenced, where that training was occurring and no one could get there, is now easily accessible. We have the Cheltenham and Ogons bus transportation system right there, the 6 bus, the C bus, the 22 bus, so it's very easily accessible. So thank you for that. I also have a question, and this one is really off the cuff. When you mention an $80 million capital need to get the fire academy at the level and in the condition that you would need it to be, I'm thinking to myself, heavy number, but we need to get there. And I'm thinking about it because this past week I traveled with Ryan Boyer, who's head of the Philadelphia Building Trades. We were at the carpenters training site. And I went through, they had all of these different students, apprentices there competing in a program relative to everything that carpenters do. But there was a company there that allowed us to sort of put on goggles. And it gave you a real life, simultaneous like just real experience. Like we were literally walking high on beams trying to weld things together. And when they were explaining the technology that they use, they said also think about a firefighter. And I was like, wow, I never thought about it. They said that kind of technology is also used at different centers across the country to train when you are preparing to get through the academy. So I said, well, I want to ask the commission. They're coming up next week. Do we use that kind of technology when we're going through training at our academy?
We use some computerized simulation training for driving, emergency vehicle driving. Candidly, the VR, I've experienced some of that virtual reality training.
Yes.
For the firefighting that we do, I mean, and this is the interesting thing about it. In a fire, you can't actually see anything. So, you're just as well to put on a blindfold and there's your VR experience, because you can't necessarily see or hear anything. For us, the real essence of that experience is in our burn building, where you can feel the heat, the smoke is around you. Again, very difficult job. So we're certainly, we look at all of these technologies that come through, and we're hopeful that as we're able to start getting through that master plan, and DPP has been a great partner in that. I mean, we all understand the constraints on capital funding. So our burn building is back in service. We're gradually and slowly moving through that plan so we can upgrade. And then maybe, as those technologies advance, we can take advantage of some of that too.
Well, thank you so very much, Commissioner, for your response. And I just want to put on the record that I want to advocate strongly for us to have the capital dollars needed to ensure that all of our trainees have the ability to have the best training as possible to do one of the most dangerous jobs here in the city of Philadelphia. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Leader. Councilmember Sanchez.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. Thank you very much. Let me not waste this opportunity to just shout out the first Latina captain, Cece Ortiz, who runs that Explorer program up there. Thank you so very much to the council member
and does a lot of other things for us too.
They have great swag. We help them fundraise every year, and I'm always just super impressed at the quality of the young people and how serious they take it. So congratulations. I want you, if you can, and submit this for the record. Since you've come on board, you came from outside and you brought in a very fresh perspective, and you've been incredibly open to our conversations around diversity and inclusion. If you can submit this, in your budget presentation, you have numbers around new hires and others, but if you can submit what is in fact kind of the diversity plan that you have, and how is it informing not only your hiring and your recruits, but like promotions and deployment strategy. If you want to briefly talk about it, but I want to make sure that people are seeing progress and feeling the diversity progress in your department. If you briefly want to talk about that.
I appreciate that, council member. Obviously it's been a priority for me now for 6 years, literally since day one. And we have moved the needle. I mean, if you look at those numbers, we were around 30% minority in the organization when I got here. We're around 40% now. We still have a long ways to go. We have a lot of work to do. In terms of women in the department, we know the national average is around 3%. We're at 12%. Again, a long way to go. So I mentioned what we've done with recruiting, with the explorers. A lot of for us, a lot of the opportunities are in other departments. The way that our hiring and promotional processes work, that's done by the Office of Human Resources. We have very little direct involvement in that. I should say, though, they're incredible partners and we work very closely. We have worked together to change the way that we do initial testing, and I think that has been part of our success. Of course, we've really doubled down, tripled down on recruitment and making sure that we're out there where we need to be, talking to folks, and maybe in particular, I think, giving folks a perspective on the fire department as a set of different career opportunities where that might not have ever been on anyone's mind before. So the community EMT classes, everything kind of falls into this. We are making progress. There's a long way to go. We're also working internally. We have our teamwork, leadership, and communications program. We're rolling out the second phase of that, and that really is about making sure that we have an inclusive work environment. That's really critical. Everybody has a feeling of belonging here, they're part of the organization. And look, I mean, this is a big organization, so I can't guarantee that everybody feels the way we want them to feel at work. I promise you that's the goal, and we're going to continue to commit resources to that as we continue to answer, an average 1,000 emergency incidents every 24 hours.
So I know that a lot of the promotion is based around testing and so forth, and we've had the conversation, and again, this is not a reflection of the HR department, but we're subscribing to these testing modules, and you and I had the conversation about the EMT. How can we? I don't want us to be in a situation where we're hiring people, paying people to administer stuff, and then it goes badly, and then we say, well, it was out of our control. We got a lot of complaints in the last testing. What review did you do with the last testing, and what improvements should we expect in the next one, and what do we need to do to help with that, right? I got calls the day of the testing that people couldn't finish their test. So what improvements are we going to do for the next round, because this is so important?
So, Councilman, I really can't answer the question about the test. That's OHR and their testing vendor. We do have input to that. And look, I think the biggest input that we had, the testing vendor last time, and again, this was a challenge for everybody. We didn't want to fall behind anymore on our staffing levels, so we really needed to go ahead and have a test, even though we were in, I think at that time, the Omicron peak of COVID-19. That testing vendor initially came in, and their idea was to do all of that completely online testing, and folks would have to go find a computer, or we just didn't think that was appropriate at all. So we really pushed them, our former Deputy Commissioner Crystal Yates and a whole team here, and OHR working with the vendor as well, pushed them to make sure that we had physical locations where folks could go to take that test. And 7,800 OGONS at our recruitment unit was one of those locations. I mean, we turned that into a physical testing site. I don't think that's the ideal way to do this. I'm hopeful that we will be out of a pandemic the next time we have to do a test. We had better results, I think, than we expected in terms of the diversity profile of that test. The points have a lot to do with that. The points application And again, Councilmember Gilmore Richardson mentioned that. That's a civil service thing. So there's a lot that goes into this. The piece that you and I have talked about that I also want to mention is the way our promotional testing processes work. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there to look at more holistic approaches. And that's just a bandwidth issue that OHR has and that we have. And hopefully as resources become less constrained, look, we're a big department, so we're testing sometimes hundreds of people for first line supervisor. You can imagine how expensive that is if you're really doing a hands-on testing model. So we've had a lot of conversations about that. Mike Z and his team have been amazing, and we're going to keep working on it. We have a ways to go.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I will absolutely continue to push. We pay these vendors; these testing modules cannot become obstacles for accessibility for these communities who have been historically marginalized, right? I mean, the diversity of the department, particularly for safety purposes, right? When you talk about language minority communities, this is about the safety for residents, but it's also about the safety for our firefighters, that is reflective on there. And I don't want to be beholden to test and testing vendors that we're paying and saying that is the problem. So I just want to make sure that we recognize that, and I'll absolutely put on the record for OHR. I want folks to have these vendors to do the job we need them to do, not what is easiest for them. And we're having that challenge as we move away from COVID in terms of not everybody is connected. A lot of us were very privileged that we're connected, but not everybody is connected, and we want to make sure that is accessible. And then finally, want to talk to, because again, we after the fire in Kensington, we talked briefly with the smoke detectors and so forth. Engine 25 in Kensington is one of the busiest, right, engine. We have a special team out there because of our opioid challenge and so forth. How do we make sure that with those backlogs for those companies who don't have the time, because they just don't have the time, right? How do we make sure that we're going to be able to get, to respond to those communities and moving away from just the traditional, I want to make sure people, don't want to point the finger or whatever, but the reality is that all the EMTs and all the firefighters in Kensington are super busy, right? That's why we have the extra resources over there. How do we make sure that we can equitably serve those around the fire line?
Councilmember, I appreciate that. I really want to reiterate that the responsibility of ensuring that there are working smoke alarms in homes is the responsibility, by ordinance of the homeowner, and if you're a landlord, by the landlord. So this is a value-add service that the fire department provides. Because we are the ones who have to deal with the tragic consequences when there are not working smoke alarms. We provided that for years. Great tribute to my predecessors. We have literally installed millions of dollars of smoke alarms. We've installed almost 50,000 smoke alarms all across the city in the past 5 years. 50,000. It is extremely frustrating, as I'm sure everybody has seen, that we're still going to homes that don't have working smoke alarms. So, we're doing this as a service, as part of our mission. We're happy to do it. If you can afford smoke alarms, please go buy them and install them yourself. If you can't afford smoke alarms, please call 311, and we will come out as soon as we can. Engine 25 is the busiest engine in the Philadelphia Fire Department. There are no not busy engines in the Philadelphia Fire Department compared to our peer jurisdictions. The busiest ambulance in the entire United States is here in Philadelphia, not that city to the north, not the cities to the west. Mm-hmm. So, it's the same workforce that is doing this. So you can imagine, we can't schedule a smoke alarm. Well, we could try to schedule smoke alarm installations, but if we're scheduled at 3:00 and a fire goes out at 2:58, we're going to the fire. Our members are going to the fire. As you saw, incredible response to that fire in Kensington, 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. Same thing with the fire in Fairmount. That's what you expect us to do. That's what our residents, businesses, and visitors expect us to do. That's our priority. That's always going to be our priority. Smoke alarms are critically important. We also want to remind people to close their door at night, close before you doze. We have our community action teams that I created 5 years ago that are doing survivor support most of all. We've had almost 400 families displaced from their homes this year so far. It was 2,000 families last year. We started by piloting one community action team. It was so busy, we created 3. They're doing the survivor support in between the fire and the Red Cross and the Red Cross House. They're not being able to install. They're so busy. We had hoped they could install more smoke alarms than they've been able to also because they're so busy taking care of folks. So we're going to continue to do this with all of our partners. Again, one of the busiest fire departments, top 3 fire departments busy in the nation, and that's just about resources. And we're very thankful for the reinvestment that we've gotten over the past 6 years, to Mayor Kenny, to the council for doing that. Our service demand has continued to increase. And again, in terms of fire duty and fire deaths, tragically, you know, we're a national leader in a place we don't want to be a national leader. So we'll keep doing everything we can do 24/7, 365 to address Philadelphia's fire problem.
Thank you, Commissioner, so very much. And you know, like I said, we tap the, you know, Neymar Brown and you guys are on our road show when we're out in the neighborhoods, and we greatly appreciate it. And we know that this is not an issue of not wanting to do it; it's an issue of resources and time. And so we appreciate all your service. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see Councilmember Clark. Council President Clark is back, so he'll be taking over. I think Councilmember Bass was next, but I'm sure the team has sent you a list. So thank you, Councilmember President Clark. Welcome back.
Thank you, sir, and thank you so much for filling in. We really appreciate it.
Happy to help out.
Council President.
Hey, how you doing, Commissioner?
Doing well. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Bass.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. I just had a couple of questions. Most of my questions were really answered. I did want to talk about smoke detectors because obviously the backlog is troubling, and I know that you guys do. Let me just say, you know, I think you guys do a great job. There's only certain people that have the fortitude that will run into a building when everyone else is running out of it. And so we have to recognize the hard work that you guys do, and you know, thank you for it. But going back to the smoke detectors, some of my questions were already answered. I guess the only thing that's remaining is it possible for you to provide us with a list by district of what the outstanding list of smoke detector installations are, just so we can have some sort of a sense of, you know, is it heavier in my district? You know, is it only a few? Just to have a sense of exactly, you know, what you guys are up against, and if there are any opportunities to help you remedy that, we would like to do that.
Councilwoman, I appreciate it. Again, to be really clear, we don't have a backlog. We had a backlog coming out of COVID. That backlog has been cleared. All of the installations that we have pending are since January of this year. So, okay. And again, all of that has to be done. So that list is changing. I know there are many people who are watching this broadcast right now, and I hope many of them are calling 311. So those will go into our queue. Again, that's not a backlog. They're calling today. So that number is constantly changing. Okay. And frankly, you know, we don't have the bandwidth to do that kind of analysis. You know, all of our resources are out towards going to these incidents and getting smoke alarms out there. You know, we just don't have the bandwidth to do that kind of analysis. I think the short answer is we have smoke alarm requests in every councilmanic district, and we are going to be out there as much as we can, as fast as we can, to make sure that our pending queue does not become a backlog.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilwoman, thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman Dom.
Thank you, Council President, and good afternoon, Commissioner Steele.
Good afternoon.
And thank you to you and your department, really, for the excellent response times and great work you've been doing. I have 2 or 3 quick questions for you. One is around the fact that, you know, we know you have an extremely busy EMS unit, one of the busiest, I understand, in the country. So I know we were very happy to see that we're investing in new dispatch technology and patient care software that will hopefully make this work easier on our firefighters and EMS units. Also, so we're building out alternative response EMS teams to respond specifically to behavioral health and opioid abuse calls. How is our new technology going to help prioritize our EMS response times? And I know with medical response prioritization, not all response times are created equal. Hopefully our dispatching technology helps us respond faster to heart attacks, for example, than responding to paper cuts, as an example. So is it possible for you to send us reporting that breaks down response times by whatever categories the department uses to prioritize dispatching, like 2018 through 22. So that would be, if that's possible, to send to us.
Councilmember, that would be very difficult with the technology that we have available. Also, all of that would have to be sanitized and run past the HIPAA attorneys because it has geolocation in it. So that would be a real challenge. Let me extend a couple of your points. Every response unit in the Philadelphia Fire Department, all of them, are EMS response units. Every fire engine, every ladder truck has at least one EMT, emergency medical technician, on board. And that's why, frequently asked question, I called 911 for an ambulance, you send a fire engine. We send the closest available unit to every incident to make sure that somebody is there who can help start providing patient care. Our ambulances, our medic units are very busy. Again, that's why we have the busiest in the nation. So it also, frankly, we're not able to prioritize incidents. The ambulance that you get, the medic unit you get, is the closest available medic unit. We are doing much better. We've added, again, thanks to the mayor and thanks to you all, we've added 10 peak time medic units in the past 6 years. We probably could have added 20 if we could find the paramedics to do that work, because really, you're just getting the next available medic unit that is probably racing to clear a patient, do their patient care report, and get back out on the street to take that next incident. So the notion of prioritization and triage that's not the reality given our resource constraints right now.
Okay.
Those data would be meaningless even if we could produce them.
The other question I have is I saw that Dominic Morellis was appointed as the new OEM director last month. So
yes, happily. He's a great person.
So that's great news. I also want to thank you. You filled that role through several hurricanes, snowstorms, and refinery explosions. And thank you for your service in filling that role. And good luck and congratulations to the new director. And I know there were some emergency management best practices developed after 9/11 that said OEM management should be separate from both the fire and police department to allow for better organization during the hazard and emergency events. Is that what we did with the appointment of Director Morellis, or is OEM technically housed in the managing director's office or fire department?
Councilmember, OEM is housed in the managing director's office now. So that was a temporary, and again, keep in mind my first job title is deputy managing director. So arguably not much change, except now, which is really important, the OEM director reports directly to the managing director, which I think that is the sort of, that's the real underlying idea behind those recommendations. I'm not sure, again, from my experience around the country doing a lot of different things, I'm not sure that really is a best practice necessarily. I think if you were to talk to some of the emergency management trade groups, they would say that's a best practice. In my experience, the answer to that is it depends. The best way to organize a particular city or county's public safety functions depends on that particular city and county. If you've seen one, you've seen one. I do think for us, I am ecstatic that Dominic is the new OEM director. He did an incredible job. Carolyn Caton, his deputy now, amazing job. We had great support from our managing director and his team and from the mayor. But I think this, we all think for now, this is the right way to be organized, to have that separate OEM director in the managing director's office reporting directly to the managing director.
Okay. Last question, Commissioner. You are clearly our leading expert on fire safety. And we've seen some, unfortunately, tragic fires recently. So what kind of safety codes, laws, or policies do you think would be most effective in preventing the tragic fires we've seen, especially?
Council member, you're very kind to say that. I'm not sure I would call myself an expert at anything. However, while I might be the city's leading expert, there are so many factors that go into fire safety, and we in the fire department control precisely zero of those factors. The real keys to having a fire safe city are ensuring that folks in their homes are being careful with cooking, heating, smoking, open flames, and electricity. In the city of Philadelphia, we don't have much, we deliver that prevention, that outreach. Please check out our website, phila.gov/fire, to get those prevention tips. Our fire prevention teams are out there 24/7, putting that information out there. As we're fond of saying, fire is everyone's fight. We really need our residents, businesses, and visitors embracing this, being careful with fire, closing their door at night, having smoke alarms. We really need building owners and landlords to help us create safe buildings. Us and our partners at L&I. L&I, of course, has the charter mandated responsibility here to do fire and building code enforcement promulgation here in the city and county of Philadelphia. That's not a fire department responsibility. We provide some expertise to L&I. I know L&I, as we would love to do more and would love to see a different profile for our fire losses, deaths, injuries, and displacements. So, look, honestly, the short answer to the question is we really need everyone to embrace this fire is everyone's fight. It's not just a tagline. So please, fires are burning hotter and faster than ever before. Our firefighters, as everybody has seen, will risk their lives and sometimes pay the ultimate sacrifice to get in there and do everything they can to make a rescue. The simple reality, and you're seeing this with the outcome of these tragic fires, the fuel packages in today's homes are so much more dense. There's so much more heat production from those, and that's a simplification. But a lot of that research is happening right next door, so we are truly in a front row seat for that research. And unfortunately, we're seeing the tragic results of that here. So as great as our firefighters and medics and dispatchers and fire marshals are, and as fast as we are, it's just all too often it's too late. So please be careful to be fire safe in your homes, businesses, for building owners and others who are responsible for safety in those buildings. You know, look, we know that sometimes it's expensive, and for us, every life really matters. And I know it's the same. I mean, this is the city of brotherly and sisterly love. So we really need folks to express that more when it comes to fire safety.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Thank you to your department for your excellent work on our behalf. Thank you. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman. I do not believe that there is anyone else queued up for round one. So with that being the case, we're going to take a break until like 1:50. So we're going to recess until 1:50, and we'll come back for the Department of Corrections testimony. Commissioner, thank you so much. Thank you and your team for your work. We appreciate you being here today to testify.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you all.
And thank you, Councilman Squilla.
Thank you. See you in the afternoon.
Here you go.